in the spirit of unity, we have the Odyssey podcast on the Iron Mindset podcast. Boys, you're both very welcome.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So we are right after the Christmas qualifier.
Yes.
And one of the main topics we want to talk about is the future of Irish powerlifting. You guys did a great podcast on it in response almost to the USAPL panel podcast. I think there was what was discussed in the USAPL Ireland podcast and then later in your podcast about the greater future of Irish powerlifting. I think we have a much clearer vision now from the final competition of 2023. How was the competition for you guys?
Awesome. Yeah, it was a great day. I had nothing to do with the organization across the country. To be fair, they pulled it out of the bag and it was a big mountain to climb, with everything that kind of went down and the kind of withdrawal of certain supports. It really was a great event. And I think the Phenom Open really laid a kind of unsuspecting groundwork for the future of Irish PF competition, because it was almost like you've talked about, there's an opening now for other players to jump in and get involved. And Ken and the lads in Phenom really did that in sourcing like this massive truss that's just class and really putting on a good show and a really big shift from a few different bodies. It was excellent. Like it really couldn't have been a better event for what admittedly felt kind of like a bit of an awkward middle child of a competition. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like, is it nationals? Is it not nationals? What are we? There's some names missing from the classes, so is it that big of a deal? But it's great.
It felt like a new flavour of competition, and Phenom definitely was kind of the first one. It felt like, there's these new lads coming to the table and this is what they're going to bring. And it was nearly brought forward like, Irish PF is boring. We want it to be fun and drinks and lights and music and all this kind of stuff. And it felt like there was a collective like, we can do that too. What are you talking about? And the guys in Phenom absolutely were the best ones to do it first and say, no, we're here with a splash. And it seemed to be, and it's no secret I'd been critical of the branching off into the USAPL Ireland, but it felt like this is the most productive and constructive way this could have gone. From a point of view from the Irish PF, it's like, no, we're going to show you that we can do this too. And it led to a great competition then. And I had similar concerns to Adam about, is this just a weird, awkward competition? Like we're trying to build it up to more than it was. And it was great. Do you know? And it had that kind of, that style, and it had that flamboyance to it, and being in a hotel and it is a great venue. I love doing meets there. Really, really kind of sold it well. So I'm much more optimistic now than I was anyway in the past. As you had called it, to be fair. I'm generally very like, oh shit, what's happening? So I'm much more optimistic now about everyone sharing the table and everyone having a seat at the table.
It's just unique flavors,
Totally,
it's just like, and there's something for everyone in all of them. And that's the beauty of this. And that's why I think 2024 is going to be the best year of Irish powerlifting, because now there's something for absolutely everyone. You know, you don't want to be dealing with like TUEs, Ab Series, awesome, and it's great crack. It's so much fun. There's loads of mad shit going on there all the time. You want to do, you want to do a competition, but not have to worry about what kind of wrist wraps you have. USAPL, awesome, and they're going to be great events. They're going to be, outsourced. They're going to be outside of gyms for the most part. I think. And then if you want the IPF route, there it is. It's there's something for everyone, and they kind of all have their unique, like I say, flavors or branding. Like the Irish PF events will look kind of like the IPF events. USAPL events will obviously look like the USAPL events. I hate the name. I'm sorry, but there it is. I think
is it going to be changing? We were promised it was going to be changed.
Yeah. There's a few things in the works, but essentially it's obviously going to be the USAPL affiliate, and it will have its own name.
Powerlifting Ireland.
I think it's Powerlifting Ireland, Powerlifting Era, something like that.
Fair enough. Okay.
That's not a definite confirmation, but I know that's been floated.
It actually kind of gotten over the name a bit as well, because when we did our podcasts, a couple of people directly or indirectly got back to us, and Gara was like, lads, is it the name? Is that the issue? And I was like, I forgot the name was a little bit silly. I kind of gotten over it for some reason.
I hate the name.
Somebody said USAPL IRL, and I was like, that's fucking funny. Like,
that sounds like a hashtag on like TikTok or something.
It's dumb. Like it's like there's like a meme thing now where it's like, don't text me if you don't know what, and it's like all these letters laid out to me. USAPL IRL. But when I listened to your podcast, my impression was Adam was like cautiously optimistic for the future, and Conor was like, what's the word? Conservatively reserved. Like, you're not making a definite approach on it. Because I don't think you were actually overly negative. I think you were kind of like, well, I need to see what this is before I can actually make an opinion on it.
I think that's very kind. That's a very kind assessment of you. I don't think reserved is a word that's used to describe me often, but yeah, I think it felt like we were two sides of the same coin, which we kind of are on a lot of things. If we're not totally on the same page, we're two sides of the same coin, so that it stops being this like bland assessment of new powerlifting thing. Very cool, because you had some concerns, but we're overall like, this is cool. I can't wait to see what this is like. Mm-hmm. I had some concerns and I was like, just, I don't know about this. Mm-hmm. Do you know? So I enjoyed talking about it, because it's weird. Like it's tough to think some of these things through without just having a proper conversation, especially somebody not only you can bounce things off of, but somebody who'll challenge you on it and say, I think you're being a bit silly here, pal, or I think you're kind of freaking out. I think you need to relax a bit. So that in our part, my changing views just came through our podcast, and I put my hands up and say, yeah, no, I've already changed my mind on it. I'm not quite there yet, but I'll change my mind again in future. That's okay.
You know what? I often think our podcast is a bit silly sometimes, but uniquely, we do challenge each other in a way that, you know, like we talked about before we started recording. You know, you're sat across from someone that you don't know very well. It's your first time meeting. You're not necessarily going to challenge them on air, right? And try and get that gotcha moment. We'll do it to each other all the time. Yeah. You know, and that's pretty unique.
I think it's valuable. It's valuable. And I'm sure your fellas, you had a host of people just compete at the Ab Series 15.
That's right, yeah.
I lose track of them. And watching I respect the Ab Series now. I would do one. I actually would.
I'm doing one.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first. Breaking news.
But I wasn't interested until I saw all of your guys at each other, and that was fun and that was cool. Yeah. And if they weren't mates, you wouldn't be saying that stuff to each other. But it's only because you're mates, only because you have that safety knowing like this is all good intention stuff. The same with him, challenge me on things or me challenge him on things. If it was some lad you didn't know, would you ever fuck off? Yeah. What are you talking about?
This is actually brilliant for me. I feel like I have like an interactive Odyssey podcast now. I can chat to you in between. This is real good fun. So this is what I would say as well, just for Conor specifically, is we talked before, just before we went on, and I said, and I want to say it on air, is that I think it's okay for people to change their mind. And it's one of the difficult things about the internet and social media, or even producing content like the Odyssey podcast. You might say something that on reflection, you might say, well, I don't feel that way anymore because we recorded that 6 months ago. And it's like people hold that like snapshot in time and go, what about this?
There's a record. It's like, I have evidence of you saying this. You can't deny it. That's the thing, actually. Yeah.
I'll give you one from me. Around Nationals, I did a podcast and I was fucking taking the piss out of some of the lads for like whacking on fucking shitloads of deep heat and Tiger Balm. And I was like, lads, we're doing 9 lifts. Chill the fuck out. I had to do that to make it through today because my fucking left knee is dusty as fuck and it's hanging off me. So I will hold my hands up and say, that was me speaking in ignorance. That was me calling people out that probably didn't deserve it. Like, I was like, you know what? I feel you now because that hurt like a motherfucker. And now in hindsight, I'm like, fair play to you for still showing up and lifting at this huge meet. But speaking of Christmas qualifier, just as somebody who lifted at it, I thought it was fantastically run. It ran very smooth and it was fun. Like, it was good crack to be at. Like, I enjoyed that far more than I enjoyed Nationals, and I enjoyed Nationals a lot. So I think one of the main things for me from competing at both was they listened to the lifters' feedback about the size of the warm-up room. I know I was speaking to Ken, who works in Phenom, Adam coaches, and does a lot of photography. How does he fucking do so many different things all at once?
God only knows. And he
loves to talk about it.
Oh yeah, I got chatting to him. I thought it was going to be 30 seconds. It was like 5 minutes. But I like listening to him. Like, so he was saying, because one of the things he was talking about was he wanted to utilize the space better and create like this like walkout tunnel. And they kind of did that.
Yeah.
They filled up more of the conference room, which is one of the things I was more critical of. I was like, we had all this fucking space. Why couldn't we use it? And then SPD had their nice big spread at the back where people were getting to check out some of the new belts and knee sleeves and things like that. And it's like, all right, this is much closer to what I was picturing we could do here. So I would agree as well, Adam, with the assessment that it was kind of like fake news Nationals, you know what I mean? It was like the Aldi Nationals, you know what I mean? Like, it was there was obviously a lot of heavy hitters invited, but where it fell in the calendar was very awkward for people. So we did have some, like we had Matthew Henry come on back to lift. We, as I mentioned, I had Beck on the podcast recently, and he had another great day. So we had some really heavy hitters. Dammy as well was on.
Dammy had an amazing day, actually.
Really, really good.
Amazing.
Yeah, it made the right choice going to Sean Noriega anyway. But don't worry, Jada won't listen to this. But it worked out for him anyway. So because I think there's whenever a lifter changes coach, there's going to be a question mark. But like obviously Dammy's a great lifter, so it's going to work for him no matter who he's.
And a change can it can incur like this new motivation or this extra adherence, or like I'm going to pay attention, or especially if it's a world class lifter, like you can like disagree with him or don't like the fella, but Sean Noriega is a world class lifter.
Yes,
and whatever. It's not that he's a greater authority on something compared to Jay, let's say, but he's different. Do you know? So that incurs that. Oh shit! There is a bit of placebo effect, and it's not just that's like I'm downplaying it, but you get what I mean.
I've actually had a recent experience. I'm just going to derail here for a second, right? So I completely agree because firstly, sometimes the novelty of working with somebody different, might produce some novel gains.
Fact,
cool,
100%.
right? But the other thing is that sometimes you will have such a long pre-existing relationship with your coach that was built on foundations of who you were when you started. And as you've matured as an athlete, you've built upon those foundations. So there's some like presumptions about your relationship that exist. When you change to somebody new as a now more seasoned, more mature and, more realized athlete who is much further along in your development, you could potentially be better off fostering a new relationship with this new coach that you are now much more, let's say, very willing to commit to their methodology versus this coach you're working with. And Dammy, I think he was like working with Jay through college primarily. So the potential is that regardless, he would have progressed, but maybe this was just the right time. And I personally, I've spoken to Shane's story about this. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea once in a while for people to try work with somebody different just to see what it's all about. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a big deal or a negative. I have this with lifters occasionally. I'll recommend to them sometimes, why you're in, let's say with Davidas in abs, you're in abs a lot more often when Dav is there. Why not work with him for a while and see how things go? So I would say that. But yeah, Guy had a great day. And a lot of the girls had a great day. Ali had a great day.
Huge standard of the women, I have to say. Like everyone, Shauna always impresses me as a lifter. She's amazing.
And Mia had a cracker of a day as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Some serious lifting. I know you guys will probably do a review of, am I right?
We never typically do. People ask for it.
I hate doing review episodes.
And they can be sour.
Is it because you forget?
Yeah, and it's just
really?
It just feels...
Or you're always afraid of forgetting somebody, but there also can be quite dry.
Yeah.
The live stream is there to watch it. Like it's...
I enjoy them.
A nugget in other podcasts. Like if we're talking about the biopsychosocial model of pain, as I'm often quoted to talking about, if we started off with there was just competition the weekend and do like a 15-minute segment of it, that kind of covers it, to be honest. Like a lot of them, you wouldn't really get an hour's worth of material out of it, would you?
Well, we do because we just talk shite, really. But I mean, they get a lot of clicks, and that's the reason that you would do them. But like the content is like, there's only so many times you can review. You do a competition review.
Yeah. One to watch.
Yeah, because you just say the same stuff over and over again. You're just saying the same things about the same people too. So
I was going to laugh. You had said 2024 is going to be the best year of Irish powerlifting ever. And like that's a meme of what we say. It's fucking true.
Yeah.
And it's a great sign that it's consistently better and better and better. But it's a meme as well.
We'll say this. Dammy broke Barry Piggott's long-standing.
Yeah. I was upset when I heard that.
Oh man. That's amazing.
Come back, Barry, please.
Yeah.
Please. He just got surgery recently.
You don't... What?
Yeah, back surgery, yeah.
For God's sake.
Yeah, there you go. But anyway.
I'm heartbroken here.
Like, that is kind of the mission statement for next year.
Totally,
It's like, that's fallen. And now you've got a 105 class that's wide open.
Yeah.
Because you've got Dammy, you've got Melvin, you've got Ken, kind of. You've got Anto, who people seem to just always forget about.
100%.
Because Anto, up until... today was the strongest 105 in the country officially, and a couple of other players who Jay Stedix, Jonathan, a couple of other players there as well who could really move in and take up some space. That's just the 105 class, So I'm really...
There's a lot of weight classes that previously were like barren and empty. Then it seems like, because you would have said to some people, you could cut to this or move to this to have like an easier day out, and your options are getting more and more limited. You're like maybe 66 and 120 plus because there's no safety. The 74 is one that I'm always impressed with now because it was such a dry weight class for a long time, and it's stacked now. And the 105s as well, weirdly, for a couple of years, there was nobody there.
Herein lies the crux of the kind of the issue next year, though, is can we continue to pool the talents in a way that makes it spectator friendly, you know?
This is it.
You know, like, I know I'm a novice pro wrestling fan. Like, I know some stuff about pro wrestling, right? But like, you've got now, it's not like there's wrestlers outside of the WWE now, that are massive, right? Like Kenny Omega. Is that the right person? Yeah. What federation is he against?
AEW, I believe.
That's the one, right?
I've heard of that. That's actually massive.
There you
well,
go.
isn't it?
But he's there. You know what I mean? He's not in the WWE. So like, most people don't know. Everyone knows the big WWE stars, right? You know? So it's like, if that happens to powerlifting, that's the problem.
That's one of the main. It is one of the main concerns that I had that it's just fragmenting the sport further. Whereas what I felt it needed anyway to go forward and to kind of reach the heights of, let's say, the French have reached and that the Spanish are slowly coming towards as well, is that the unity of all the lifters and all the best talent all competing together under the same weight classes. Never mind the weight classes now in the USAPL being different and they are comparable because they're very similar, but I felt it best as a nation to push ourselves forward was to have everyone on a united front and everyone compete together and send forward the best of our best. But if half of them are dragged into this other federation through their club ties or whatever, and half are dragged into the other thing, I'm like, lads, like, it's from a national point of view, I feel like we're not doing ourselves a service. And that's a criticism that I have. Never mind the weight classes being different, because 105s, great weight class. Oh, USAPL will do 110 or whatever it is. You could say it's comparable, but you'll always get somebody who's like, you did that 5. If I could weigh 5 kilos heavier, I would have done that too. Do you know what I mean?
I think my motivation is slightly different from yours. And I'm interested, I want to jump in and hear what you think of all this too. Because we talked about this on our podcast. But I'm looking at it from a national, like a at nationals point of view.
I understand.
Not like to be honest, like, I don't really care that much who goes to internationals. Do you know what I mean? Like, good lifters are going to go to internationals. That's the way it is. You know, the best lifters are going to want to do that, right? What I'm talking about is like our national championships, you know, and like maybe missing like 1 or 2 names because they went this other like, really attractive route that I do not blame them for going. You know, that's to me, that's the challenge that the next year will bring. You know,
you had referenced boxing, because that is a bunch of different, I don't know what is going on in boxing, and you said, oh, it's kind of cool because they have this unified fight and you're the unified champion. I think it sucks. Because I don't know if everyone's a world champion. It seemed like the old school kind of Irish powerlifting thing was every Tom, Dick and Harry was a world champion and had their world records. I hate that. I think it makes the sport look like a circus. Like that's what I'm afraid of happening. Do you know? But you know, it is what it is. I don't have an answer for that. I don't think anyone can have an answer for that, because it's gonna happen. Yeah, you know, I don't think you can avoid it really, because this has always been the thing in Irish powerlifting. This is why when I first counted it, there was like 11 federations on open powerlifting listed. It's because, well, I want to bench with my heels up, so I'm gonna go and set up my own federation and say, well, I hate bench steps as a rule, maybe understandable, and I want to do my own thing. You can't mandate that, but unless, let's say it got funding and you were committed to the one federation, then fine. But that's a total other rabbit hole that this is one of the first times I'll ever say that's outside of my scope, and I can't speak on that because I don't know what the criteria is for being. I actually Googled it recently in prep for a podcast, all the criteria for setting up as a sport under Sporting Ireland and qualifying for national funding. And now that I talk about it, you can have multiple governing bodies, but it's this whole rigmarole of stuff like that. But anyway, that's I suppose if I was to sum up the crux of my concern, it's that, and my other concern is nobody can do anything about that. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Unless the different options incurs 10x more powerlifters in Ireland, and then sure we'll have the bodies, which is a possibility. Do you know? Because it's one of the easiest sports in the world to pick up. There's equipment everywhere. It's super simple. It's super easy. And one of my pet peeves, I know we've talked about this as well, it's cheap. Powerlifting is not expensive. If you think it is, I don't know what world you're living in.
You haven't played a lot of other sports.
You haven't played a whole lot of other sports. Yeah. Did golf for a couple of months. Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, actually, incidentally, it's a conversation I've had here with Raquel Rhea. Powerlifting is a lot of people's first sport.
Yeah.
There's a lot of adults that have never been in any sports before. And powerlifting is the first thing that they get into because it's like low barrier to entry. It's something you can show up and do. Like she seems to like specialize in that cohort. She has her own like crew of lifters, and many of them, as far as I know, that I've met a good few really nice people. I don't think many of them have played a whole pile of other sports.
Yeah,
you know, and I think especially in a country that's almost exclusively field sports, this is kind of like a bit of a breath of fresh air for people. But so I think the conversation about like ultimately like what is the best thing for Irish powerlifting as a whole, right? I think firstly for it to actually, the conversation to go anywhere, whether it's under the USAPL Ireland or Irish PF, AB Series I'd put off to decide its own thing. It's not a federation.
Fair, yeah.
It's just standalone events, right? And I'll go into the motivations for the first ever ABS Pro just to give some insight into that. Firstly, I think let's just say everyone was to sit down and decide what is the long-term big picture outcome for Irish powerlifting, because I think that needs to be agreed on first, because and I'll say it out loud, I personally don't think it should be the pursuit of being in the Olympics. I don't think that's the route to go.
I don't think any of us do.
No.
But there are people that do want that. So we need to agree on what the preferred outcome is and then what are the steps to get there. So the problem is at the moment is that I think everybody does mostly agree. And I don't think, like, I can see the argument for maybe not having two different governing bodies, right? But if we look at the majority of powerlifters, like probably mostly regional, they can lift where they want. They're going to not pick meets based on weight classes or rules. They're going to pick where they're based and what time of year they're on it and does it suit them.
Yeah.
So I can see there being an argument for oversaturation, sure. But then I could also say, but every open last year sold out in minutes, basically, if not like within a day. So maybe the demand exists. Like I had 14 lifters at AB Series. Do you know what I mean? And I'm just one dickhead. You know what I mean? So imagine if like there's people like think how many lifters are in Chaos, how many lifters are in Odyssey, how many lifters are in Abs, how many lifters are in City Gym, and then every other like you see all these like smaller clubs popping up everywhere now.
Yeah.
So and even like random like semi-private personal training studios just putting together their own powerlifting teams.
Yeah, that's absolutely, yeah.
So I think the demand will exist. I don't think like, so I know I've spoken about, you replied to me about my story about like spectator experience versus athlete experience.
Yeah, I thought you were going to go into that right now.
Yeah, we'll definitely discuss it because I think I spoke to Cormac about it a little bit. We voice messaged a little bit and I spoke to Clarice a little bit today as well about it. So one of the things is, and you guys obviously talked about it after the USAPL Ireland panel podcast about like, yeah, obviously you're not going to have every like regional level open lifter getting a tinted out Mercedes Sprinter bringing it to the venue, right? And it's these things exist on a bell curve. Like, so it doesn't mean, like, I personally think the opens are fine. The opens are fine. An open being run in a powerlifting gym, I think is fine.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? I also think that, like, so for example, this meet, I think is a fantastic representation of like a bigger domestic meet. And I know Nationals is in the Radisson later next year, which is cool. I think that's a great idea. And I imagine this will be iterated on again. And so one of the things I was talking to Cormac about, and again, this is actually one of the things, and it's why it's nice to have these conversations, because there's presumptions I could make that because I don't have the intimate details committee members have. So I was saying, like, why couldn't we have like more retailers? Like, and he's like, well, SPD are one of the sponsors. They sell apparel. They're not going to want other apparel vendors there. That makes sense. The hotel sell food, so they're not going to want other like food like stalls there. Okay, that makes sense. So these are like logistic things that you just can't, like, you're not privy to. There's a degree. And I spoke to what's her fucking name? Kettlebells and Coffee.
Karen Keating.
Karen was like, why don't you like, would you put your name forward for a committee role? And I'm like, like maybe, but like understand that like everything I'm saying is completely from a place of ignorance. This is just like big picture. And this is then tying into a conversation I had with Clarice. None of this is to say what is currently happening is bad. And I would generally disagree if people were saying like, oh, Irish PF is like boring, because I've been to an international meet now and I know what boring is. You know what I mean? So, and even Iceland wasn't that bad, like, you know?
Yeah.
So I can see the difference domestically versus internationally. Whenever I watch the lads, I can see the difference. I know like it seems like absolute shy crack all around. Like whereas like domestically, all the comps are always good bit of fun. You know.
Yeah.
So I don't think where they are now is by any means bad. I think it's more of a case of don't take any form of, well, why don't we try this and why aren't we trying for this? Let's push for this. It's not saying you are being criticized for your efforts. It's saying these people are all really enthusiastic. What could we do to make these things happen? And this is me talking about the Irish PF, right? So I'm excluding the whole USAPL Lab Series thing. So that's kind of that conversation of like how we take things up to. So if I talk about spectator experience, I don't just mean about like, because like, right, after a certain point, the average person doesn't know the difference between 200 kilos and 300 kilos. They just hear heavy. So there's, we've probably seen we do it at the Ab Series incidentally, where you build up the characters. Like people were bought into the Division 2 battle between my four lads.
Yeah, big time, yeah.
Because they just talked a little bit of shit on Instagram and I made some really terrible CapCut TikToks. And the lads were like getting such a good buzz off that. That's all that was. It was just a bit of fun. And honestly, like the reaction for that flight was amazing, you know? So that's kind of where I sit on that. As to how like the two federations can coexist, I think it's going to be that. I think most people will just pick where they're going to live based on location, based on convenience, based on time of year. And I think the only reason has to be, well, this or that is Article 14.
Yeah.
Like, and even at that, I know I'm jumping about 10 different places, but I want to say it out loud before I forget. I'm actually proposing to the lads that they don't run it as regionals to qualify for nationals to get selected for internationals. Why can't we run it slightly differently? It can be the same fundamental formula, but why does it have to be USAPL Ireland Nationals? Why can't it be a different thing? And then to tie it back into what I was mentioning about the original ABS Pro back in 2018, the idea of the ABS Pro was a standalone event to see the best lifters from the Irish PF, from IPO, WPC, whatever other federations there were, go against each other in this like WrestleMania style big one-off event. So if Article 14 didn't exist, imagine the type of cross promotion you could run.
That would be incredible.
So if the talent pools were big enough, and they will be, given enough time for lifters to develop, I think that would be fucking cool. You know what I mean? That could be a really impressive thing to do. But by all means, the floor is open. Give me your thoughts.
Mine are really simple, and I can see you thinking away there. So to me, it's a case that like I believe that a high tide raises all ships, and I think this is at high tide. This is as high as the powerlifting tide has ever been in Ireland. That you're dead right. The demand is there, undoubtedly. That you can't argue that the demand for more powerlifting competition in Ireland is there. So this other avenue will pop up, and we're talking about it from the position of fans of the sport at a high level, not necessarily. We're not really actually talking about it from like the health of the sport in general, because the sport is not made up of the best athletes. The sport of powerlifting in Ireland is made up of the few thousand people that partake. What percentage of those are the elite level? 5% or less, right? So yeah, I think that this is all. It's all going to be fine. More people are going to join the sport. We're going to meet the demand, and that ultimately, like you say, more clubs are going to pop up, which is just going to continue to improve and bolster things. And in the future, when and I'm sure it will, the kind of paths of these different avenues can meet. They will meet, and we'll have been glad for this additional thing coming about, because this is coming. There's been a lot of this over the years, right? There's been multiple federations rise to the top and be the biggest one and then fall in spectacular fashion. This is not that. This is different, because these are all going to coexist. Like, it's not like one has fallen from grace and everyone's migrating over. Like, no, this is a different thing. So again, I'm a little bit more than cautiously optimistic now. I am optimistic, and I plan on partaking in more than one of them. I'm probably going to do. I did the Phenom Open there a few weeks back. I'm probably going to do the Phenom Open again in March. Why? Because I'm from Cork, and it's up the road.
Convenience, yeah. It makes sense.
It's only an hour away, whereas competing in Dublin, it's 4 hours away. So that's why I'm going to do that, and then I'm doing the ABS series in Cologne in Germany. Not close to me, but good crack. It seems like fun. So yeah, That's my take. That's my position.
Light it up, Conor.
No, I agree with everything that you're both saying, and you're both right. I'm more thinking about what you're saying about the vast majority of shareholders in the sport. I was going to say are pricks like me who are competing on a regional level and probably aren't going anywhere else. Do you know? And to think about the health of the sport from that point of view, I think is incredibly beneficial. Do you know? And I'm only just thinking about, if the Irish PF is open to a challenge, let's say, and that's putting it in unfair language, but open to a challenge with allowing or facilitating other federations to coexist and kind of and have a little bit of not a little bit of a scrap for resources, but allow them to kind of push each other and build each other up. I see that now as a way for the quality and the health of the sport for the vast majority of its shareholders to only increase over time. And when you're talking about big federations rising and falling spectacularly, probably because they've insulated themselves from the kind of feedback and advice and pressure and stressors that could cause this to grow. Do you know? And it's unfortunate because the affiliate that I'm certainly affiliated with, the Irish PF, has a governing body that is insulating themselves from the stressors, feedback and advice of the lifters. And now that I'm talking about it, now that I'm hearing you saying about it, fuck, it's tough to not see it fall spectacularly because of this. But maybe the Irish PF will not have such a fall because we're all mates. And probably because we're an island and everybody knows everybody. And you don't have the option of saying, no, I'm going to be insular and I'm going to do my own thing. You can fuck off. Yeah, we don't have that luxury because there's not that many lifters yet. So, yeah, I suppose optimism now is a word that I will tag onto my opinion now. For Ireland, for the International Powerlifting Federation, God only knows. And is it even worth speculating on? Because I was going to ask you a question about, you would say, because you were asking questions and you were asked, would you ever go for a committee position about why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? In your opinion, from somebody from the outside, and I wouldn't even say that to you, is the committee approachable or is it open to feedback? Is the Irish PF open to feedback and open to change, whereas the IPF clearly isn't?
In my experience, absolutely. There's a committee member right here on the podcast.
He's one too.
Oh, you both.
Apparently.
He is the worst committee member of all time.
I'm terrible. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that. And
I'm pretty bad. I'm not amazing either.
But like, this is what I mean. Like, I would consider like Ali very approachable. Yeah. She actually had listened to the podcast with Melvin just before the October Open. And she said it to me, she goes, maybe we should just like open like some kind of like suggestion box things. There's so many ideas. She was like, that's actually a great idea. I don't know why we haven't thought of
anonymous Q&A suggestion box.
No, don't do that. They're for the memes.
Dumpster fire.
I enjoy those.
Me too.
Like, so like, I think absolutely. I think a massive amount of like the main, I don't even want to say criticisms, but like maybe like what people are wanting to see are things that are like, oh yeah, we do that. We just haven't thought of it. Just tell us and we'll see what we can do. Yeah. And this is again, to tie it back into this meet for me. Like, I obviously had question marks on what will the Irish PF look like without Jay Farrant and then Garben or Ian Benson, whoever, but let's just say primarily Jay because he was president at the time. And I am quite optimistic after this meet. I think this was very well done. And I think you mentioned it, I've said it many times, I think this creates a vacuum for other people to step into, and they are. And I think that's a good thing because I don't think there's a problem with there being two really well-run, tested federations in Ireland. I think we have the room for it, and I think it will. Like obviously 2024 will tell us more, but from what I've seen now, I think we're in a really good position. And I like at the same time, I'm sure when the AB series became a regular thing, people were probably like, how is this going to coexist with the Fed? Yeah. And it does, and it has never been a problem. You know, so I don't see how it could be going forwards with one more thing. So that's kind of my stance. Like, naturally, I still have questions. I still have, like, do you ever do like SWOT analysis on things? Yeah. So like, for people listening, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. But like, I would go through like that process when I look at like different federations. So I think more meets, more open level meets is going to be better for the vast majority, particularly for me as a coach, and I'm sure you guys as coaches. It's very frustrating when you have somebody who really wants to lift and you want to strike while the iron's hot and they can't get a meet because, and you're like, well, the September Open sold out, but we can wait and see for October, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now they're going to have a couple more options. Great. The potential weaknesses, oversaturation of the market, that is potentially there. But the big opportunity then is to see the visibility of the sport rise, because fundamentally, let's say, for example, if we want to look at the pessimistic view and say, well, the Irish PF just lost a couple of abs as a venue, let's say. The idea is to not run a lot of meets in abs, full stop, not necessarily just not Irish PF. But then that means it opens up other markets. The Marina market in Cork is on the list for next year, and that's a savage venue.
Yeah, you hadn't heard about that. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm screaming the ears off everybody.
Yeah.
For who? For abs?
No, for Irish PF. For a couple of meets, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe Masters Nationals is there, and there's an Open the next day. So that's going to be huge. And that's the point. That opportunity is born out of the change that's come, which means that more powerlifting competitions are taking place in bigger markets. More people can see it. Abs and USAPL are going to be running in the new warehouse venue in the Red Cow, which is like a nightclub. So that's going to be huge. And again, this exposes to bigger, better, and it's like you guys, I had this conversation with James Hanley. You listened to that episode where, back in the day, the standard was, if you were lucky, if there was good comp equipment on the platform and everyone warmed up on shit equipment in the back. You probably remember that yourself from your own early days powerlifting.
Yeah. In rep.
Man, I competed at an IDFPA. It was funny because I listened to the podcast with James on the way up this morning. It was class. Because I've competed in an IDFPA meet, and IDFPA was so bad. And it was great. At the time, everyone was like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. Powerlifting's so cool. We were all so...
Probably way better than what had come before it as well.
Yeah. And it was objectively, now looking back,
awful.
Shit. Really, really poor for a variety of reasons. But I've competed with bumper plates on the bar at a national level event.
Nice.
There was a 20 kilo bumper plate.
And the other critique cool. there is that Adam Phillips was competing at a national level event. What was the standard like?
But the thing there though is that take it from there, right, to now where somebody got a look into the warm-up room, are there only 2 squat racks in the warm-up room?
Yeah.
I was like, fuck's sake, man. That's come a long way, because obviously there was 3 today, but was plenty. Everyone had plenty of space.
Totally.
But that, it's as the standard gets pushed, people want more. And that was kind of one of the things people were talking, some of the pushback in the USAPL thing was what venues are going to be used? What are the new big venues? But that's the idea. It's maybe take those bigger level meets up that extra little level, and they are now the new standard for national level meets or one-off spectacle meets. They're USAPL are doing a Euro tour at the moment, I think, and they're going to do the finals in Ireland. So that's going to be in that venue.
Cool. That's cool. I like that idea.
In the same way, now that we've had the bleeding Raddy Blue for two meets, it's okay, this is now a cool standard to hold for nationals.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's significantly more expensive than running it in a gym, but maybe we should start to expect that as the new minimum standard for what we want from national level meets.
Yeah.
Hot water in the taps is nice.
Yeah, it's real nice.
That's all I'm saying.
Proper jacks is pretty nice.
I'll say this from having been at Abs Series 15 and Abs, I'm very happy Abs was last weekend and this was this weekend, because this weekend was significantly colder, and that would have frozen the bollocks off me last weekend.
Nice to be warm today.
Yeah, it was quite it was pleasantly warm as well. So, this is actually an essential. Having heating in here is nice. Air conditioning's pretty cool, guys. People being able to nip in and out to the toilet without having to queue. That's pretty good. So there's good. I think that's the point. As the needle gets pushed forward, it's there probably is an element of concern for where the sport can go, and not trying to push too much money into this one aspect of it. I can totally see the point there, but I think, isn't it cool to see it at this level now?
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, 100%.
The idea of the once-off kind of spectacle meets is cool. I think a bunch of people we had spoken about it, a Halloween meet where it's silly things you're in costume, do you know? Or now this was definitely when you were on the beer, but I think I'd said to Jimmy and Phenom is a meet where you have one attempt. This is high risk, high reward, and that's another benefit. It'll be fast. There's 2 other big concerns I have with USAPL. We're on a nice optimistic streak. I don't want to come in and shit all over it.
Do it.
Yeah, you're going to know.
But there's two legitimate concerns that I have, and I'll just list them before we go into them.
Yeah.
The first one is safeguarding of members. There's now, I don't know if there's plans for there to be a committee, but there's 3 guys running the show. If you have a problem with any one of those 3 guys, for whatever reason, you can have problems with anybody for any reason, that's not an option for you. Whereas if you have a problem with Adam Phillips, because he's on the committee with the Irish PF, you won't be dealing with them. Fuck him. Or you can deal with other people. Or there's an avenue there for you to report and have misconduct dealt with. Do you know? But if it's one of the 3 guys that are running the show, I can. It's not about the 3 guys.
I get you're raising a concern. Yeah.
Fuck off. It's like, if you have an issue, go compete Irish PF then. And the second concern I have is about funding. All of these great promises, and not to say that they're lies or anything, because I don't doubt if anyone in the Irish PF is going to deliver on promises like this. Number one, it's Jay Farrant anyway. He's consistently shown that, and I've admired his consistency and the effort and the passion that he puts into it. So if there's anyone who can deliver on crazy promises, it's fucking Jay. But who's financing all this? I'm afraid that the regional meets, the lower level meets, for the vast majority of shareholders in powerlifting, are going to fund the big, massive spectacle meets, and they'll be given the kind of short change. As you said, nobody's coming around in a sprinter to pick me up to miss my third pull again. Do you know what I mean? It'll be Joe Kavanagh's bus bringing the fucking school bus up to collect me and the lads.
Yeah.
That's my concern, is that either it's ticket prices or increased membership prices is going to be passed to Joe Soap to let the big spectacle meets have their spectators and show this super flashy, super sexy, super attractive powerlifting meets that nearly sells a false promise. There are 2 concerns that I have. Do you have any feedback on that? Having spoken to, is Wade Johnson is your man?
Wade Johnson is your man. Yeah.
Did he allude to anything like this?
So, well, I'll give you a couple of insights. So, naturally, I am speaking strictly as an outsider. I'm not in the administrative end of that. I work with Jay in abs.
Not a representative of USA.
Exactly.
USAPL IRL.
Don't get me wrong. USAPL IRL. Like, don't get me wrong. I am trying. That's going to stick now. I am trying to. I actually think it was James Hanley that said USAPL IRL. Now that I think about it.
It was.
That was funny.
He's big social media marketing, but of course.
8 letters, man.
Yeah, it's
8,
a lot.
That's too many.
But in any case, I will naturally try to glean info out of the lads, so I can mostly pass it on to my own lifters, but also because I can then speak with a degree of knowledge on the topic.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, let's say, look at the financial side of things. So here's just incidentally, Jay pays all the spotters and loaders at abs. So the guys that spot the Pro-Am flight from this weekend gone, they get paid. The guys that spot and load at the Pro, they get paid. Now, I don't think that it's a massive amount of money, but they get paid for their efforts. I was down in Urban Barbell with Ian Benson for the October Open. Ian very nicely fucking put us up in his house for a few nights, and we trained in his gym. We were there for about 4 fucking hours chatting shy. Like, it was good crack. But he broke down the maths of how the first couple of meets, this is exactly how the expenditure will go, right? And it doesn't result in every person that's going to be there getting a lot of money, but everyone will be given, a brown envelope with something in it. You know what I mean? And then the idea is how to create more finance off the back of this. Like, I don't know if you guys have gotten to speak to Ian Benson extensively. That man has fucking a big brain in his melon. Like, he is very forward thinking. He thinks big picture. He wants the federation to do really well, because he's like, this just helps all of us if we all do. He has lifters that want to lift in the Fed. Now, he wants USAPL Ireland to blow up because he has a stake in it. He wants that to become a huge thing.
I think that's exactly my position. Like, I draw clientele out of this wider community. So for me, it's a great thing if USAPL blows up and adds 1,000 more people. It's like amazing.
Yeah.
Now we have 3
Link in
markets.
bio. Come on.
Yeah,
those people are going to need coaches.
There you go.
So this is it, and honestly, if you haven't had the chance, have a chat with Ian Benson. He's a super fucking smart. Like, honestly, because I think he's one person a few of the people like maybe know the least about, because Jay is fucking Jay, and Gar's like around, everyone's chatting to Gar. Gar's a super nice guy. Ian is a really good ideas guy, and he's a really good businessman. Like, he runs, like, I don't know if you've ever been in Urban Barbell. It is the finest powerlifting establishment.
New spot looks really cool. I'd love to go down.
I've never seen a clean powerlifting gym before. This place was spotless.
Okay.
Like, it's not a speck of chalk or fucking talc anywhere. I was like, what the fuck? He has like a vacuum in the corner on the wall, and people hoover up after they're done. Like, it's so nice. Ask Tracy when next time we're at one of the meets. Oh man, such a nice fucking gym. Like, really, really nice. And he's such a sweetheart to talk to about these things. And that's the thing. He will talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%.
He brought us into his office, and he had all the plans for like 2024, and they're on like, I loved his organization because I could never do this. He had like all the what do you call them? The fucking sticky notes all over the wall. So like green, pink, yellow, whatever. And like, so he was laying out what the idea is. So I don't think they'll mind me talking through some of this. The idea is to use bigger venues to then be able to sell spots to vendors. So that creates a little bit of excess income. The vendors have access to a huge market. It makes the event a bit bigger. I would equate this to something like a Comic-Con. Comic-Con, you can go in, there's speakers, there's people, they're having to, like, given like some of their background on whatever the fuck they do, whether they're an actor on a TV show, like some fucking nerd shit, you know what I mean? Or they are the artists or whatever. It's creating an element of that, but in a powerlifting meet. So this is actually something I was thinking of, and I don't know if I might have mentioned this with Beck, right? Say in most competitions, like big meets, like nationals, there's usually a bit of a break between the morning and the afternoon, right? So let's say it's even an hour, right? We can do something with that time.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew Rowe and Andrew Blackwood have just started a podcast.
Yeah.
Why can we not plant the table up the top and the two lads do a live podcast? Why can't Odyssey Strength do a live podcast?
We kind of did at one point. Fun. 4 people there was fun.
But this is what I mean. Live podcast with live mics so the crowd can hear, right? Yeah. While, you know, and this is just adding more value to the price of entry. 20-minute topic, talking about whatever, 10 or so minutes of audience Q&A.
It's a halftime show.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a cool idea.
It's a really
very
idea.
cool idea.
Yeah.
So this is like the type of stuff. Like, so when I was talking to Ian, it was like, why can't we have another event on? Why can't on the like the 10 minutes between, let's say, deadlifts and squats, squats and bench? Why can't we have like arm wrestling? Or like, you know that thing where people like fucking slap each other's hands again?
Power slap.
Yeah. Why can't we have something like that? Why can't that be a thing? And that like would fit, like it might not fit the vibe of the Irish PF, but it might fit the vibe of USAPL or AB Series. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why can't we? Because we could.
Yeah.
And the thing is that it only takes one competition for that to, oh, they did this cool little thing at halftime. It might not hit the first time, but then creates the opportunity for to be things in those little segments. So that would be the idea of how you open up the excess finances to be able to pay people to a degree. And I know, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine the federation are not in a position to do that because I think the roles have to be voluntary. Am I correct?
I'm not sure.
I don't know
either. Somebody had told me that, and I can't remember who, but I've said this on the podcast, or I think I said it to Beck. I'm almost certain that it was like a thing that the Fed has to be voluntary, or like any Irish IPF affiliate has to be voluntary. Mm-hmm. I'm almost certain like you can't be paid for your efforts. So that kind of like is a thing there. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that. That's why
me either. I'm not going to speak on it. I'm not sure either. I had thought, like, I know British Powerlifting is a limited company.
Okay, all right.
I don't know the ins and outs beyond the fact that they're a limited company. Can you exist in a voluntary capacity in a limited company? I don't know anything.
Maybe we shouldn't speak outside our scope.
Maybe not. Conor, go.
I'll go off. Just so what you're saying. So to address the point that I had, the main concern that I was is financing this operation going to be passed on to Joe Soap? It sounds like there's options there, so that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. I would not expect or ask Ian, Gar, Jay to lay out the finances in front of me for the sake of answering my concerns. But if they've reassured you and others that look, we have plans about this, we have multiple different options that we're going to do to avoid obviously the negative consequence of lumping the cost onto just the average lifter, then that's cool. That's cool with me now. I wouldn't expect somebody to lay out their fucking spreadsheets.
Even down to though, like I know, just again, more surface level, the first USAPL meet isn't open and it's in that new venue, which is they're also hosting the ABS Clash of Titans event, and I'm pretty sure the Euro Tour final is going to be there as well. Nice. So like that isn't, a Joe Soap Open. Somebody could be going and doing the first 90 kilo squat, and they're going to be in this fucking massive fucking venue. That's
2 or 3 lads in chaos. Though I think this was part of the reason why I was like, cool, I actually might do that as well. Because Jack Brennan and Evan Carey, I had asked them, they just did October. And I was like, when's the next meet? And they were like, February, boy. And I was like, what's in February? They're like, USAPL. And I was like, hardly. And he's like, it's a fucking nightclub, man. Come on, it'll be class. And I was like, that is pretty cool, actually. So, like,
I think it's also giving it the room. Firstly, it's give it the room to see if it'll work.
That's my thing.
Sure.
I'm just literally waiting to see how it shakes out. I'm quite like quiet and reserved on specific commenting about what I think it's going to be like because I have no idea. We'll see. We'll see.
I admire that quality of you because I definitely don't have it. Whereas you're like, let me see what happens and then I will say something. Whereas I feel like I'll just go off on something.
But I think that this is kind of the point though. If you think back, this time 2 years ago, we had nothing to talk about. There was nothing going on because it was from COVID.
Yeah,
there was no powerlifting going on. There was the occasional lab series, and that was it. Now there's shitloads of stuff happening, and that's cool. It's cool to wait and see what's going to happen in January, February, March.
Yep.
You know, and even at that, the first quarter of the year has so many meets. I mean, obviously, that's like when you're a coach, like, fuck my life. But like, isn't it cool that all those opportunities exist? And I know, look, maybe that's airy-fairy, pie in the sky. Oh, everything's going to be so good. But like, I think that then opens the door for things to be better with the Irish PF, with the AB Series, with USAPL Ireland. And I do think there is enough room for them all. I know you were asking about like safe.
That's a tricky one. I'm not expecting you to give me the answer for that. That's just a concern that I have, you know, and I think that's a particularly nasty one because it's uncomfortable to confront the potential that something might go wrong and there might be, I don't even know what to call, like, do you know what I mean? Like that's like a wicked problem. There's no easy solution to that. So it's unreasonable for me to just throw it out there. But I suppose it should be. You
can vocalize it. Yeah.
It should be vocalized anyway. You know, like I use AB Series as it's like the perfect example because it's Jay's show. And again, I'm not shitting on the AB Series. I've complimented it hugely in the past. And the reason it runs so well, in large part, is because it's Jay's show. He doesn't need anyone's permission. He doesn't need to go any through bureaucratic rigmarole. He thinks, oh, that's a cool idea. I'm going to try it out. Didn't really work, we'll scrap it. That worked, I'm going to bring it forward. And the meets run so well, so smooth, because he picks the spotters and loaders and he rewards them for their time, their efficiency, and their professionalism. Love that. But if you have a problem with Jay, if a couple of people that we spoke about earlier on that are blocked by Jay, I think I'm still blocked by Jay for some reason, have an issue with him, I'm not signing up to that. That's an avenue gone to me. Do you know? What do you do about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that is definitely probably that like gray area. But what I actually did incidentally have a conversation with him recently about like people or a person that like really doesn't like him and he doesn't really like them, but they were asking could they do USAPL? And he was like, yeah.
We're just kind of pointing out the inherent pros and cons of
they exist.
Committee-based versus dictator-based. It's like, committee on a committee, things happen slowly. Do you know, whereas in Jay's thing, Jay can just decide this is happening at the next meeting that happens. Whereas it might take a year or two for the RHPF to implement something because it has to run through a whole committee and then it's a logistical thing. Beyond the thing itself, running something through a committee is a logistical issue, you know?
But I think
coughing here, man.
Do you need some water?
No, I'm just I've been sick for like 6 weeks.
Long time, yeah.
I know.
So it's a case of it's good that both exist, and I don't think one has to come at the expense of the other. And that's kind of because this is one thing I would say, right? Coming from a pro wrestling background, one of the golden eras in pro wrestling was when we had the WWF, the WCW, and then there was like ECW, which is essentially what the AB Series is, right? All three of these places did really good business because all three of these places existed.
Yep.
When WCW and ECW went out of business, the WWF became WWE. It was the biggest game in town and actually started to see a decrease in quality and a decrease in viewership and a decrease in fandom. Now, it got bigger again, obviously, because it changed tact. But in essence, it's the time people will look at most fondly, maybe because it's associated with their childhood or whatever. But in any case, businesses typically do well when there's something comparable to it that it can compete against. It's why if you go into any retail park, you'll see like two businesses that sell exactly the same thing, like PC World and fucking like Harvey Norman are always right beside each other because it's much like people will generally pick things based on convenience. And if both of them are together, well, I'll check the price in there and then I'll go in and check in there. But they both do better business because they're beside each other than if they're on opposite ends of the town. So it's the same idea. I think both existing will make the other thing better. And I don't think it has to come at the expense of the other thing. Like maybe on a, like for us, like I really wish, I don't know, Damien Nam would lift in USAPL Ireland, you know, or I really wish
But there's a certain kind of magic there too, right? Like, this is a complete contradiction to what I said earlier. But like, again, I think like immediately what pops into my mind, is Fedor Emelianenko and the UFC.
Yeah.
Never really competing in the UFC. Did he eventually did he have a fight in the UFC?
I believe so.
I think he had one when he was way past his prime, but he never fought in the UFC in his prime. And is that a good or bad thing for the ghost that is Fedor Emelianenko? Like, what if he was in the UFC?
There's a bit of mystery to it.
And it didn't shake out. You know? It's like, he might not have been Fedor, do you know? Whereas now he's Fedor. And I think there'll be some of that here as well if they all if this is a long-term thing.
Yeah.
Where there'll be a certain amount of legend involved, and it could even be cool. You know?
Yeah.
I don't
Do you know that I haven't watched. I watched I think one episode of it and I thought it was crap. But you know it's the What If series, the Marvel thing. Yeah. It's kind of like, what if Damien Nam competed in raps or like on a deadlift bar? It's like, it's imagine that, or imagine if Jake Haga was winning the 105s and came up against this, or what if Barry Piggott came back and did this? I totally get that, and it's like a separation between them builds up because there's that what if, and it's the mystery to it. Do you know? Whereas if Fedor Emelianenko came into the UFC and got bet, or it's whatever, it's like
ran into a prime Cain Velasquez and got absolutely smacked.
Like, we know now.
Yeah.
Well, like just in the hypothetical world, right? Because this is just this talk came to me in the evolution of this conversation when I was talking to you about the original Labs Pro and what it was about, right? So I know one of the contentious things about say USAPL versus IPF is weight class difference. What if you did like a super meet where it was the best of each, but you just did away with the weight classes and you just did a dots meet?
Love that.
But is that in contention with Article 14? Because it's
probably, yeah.
But is it a national level meet if it's just a spectacle?
I mean, we could just call it a regional level meet.
Is it the terminology that you use around it, or is it the degree to which people can qualify for certain events?
No, so that if you have aspirations of competing nationally in the Irish PF, not you, of course.
Hell, man. Rootless.
Yeah. You can only just go, yeah.
It doesn't matter what event you competed at outside of the IPA. It could be
it doesn't matter what I do. Like,
not you, man. Come on.
But so, like, let's. I know we don't, but like in an imaginary world where Article 14 doesn't exist and isn't getting in the way of all of our fun, I think that's the idea. You can do away, like, because obviously I think the different weight class, I think that's good because some people fit firmly between weight classes. So this gives them a choice, right? But this is what I'm trying to say. Imagine you could imagine like we're 4 years down the road. There's a very well established USAPL Ireland roster. There's a very well established Irish PF roster, and you can host a super meet where it's the best 90s versus the best 93s, the best 100s versus the best 105s, but it's all just a side on dots. So the lighter lifters could potentially have an advantage on a dot score if they can match similar numbers, but these guys are typically competing heavier, they're a little stronger, and you can host these super meets because the rules are essentially the same. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's not a massive disparity in the rule sets between USAPL and IPF.
There's not going to be.
And there's plenty of precedent for cross-promotion other sports. You know? It's not like this is a crazy out there idea that's completely unfeasible to just have these two slightly different variations of the same fucking sport.
Yeah.
Cross-promote.
I think when Christmas Clash was first being proposed, I don't know if you had proposed it or you proposed this idea or you just said it to me that wouldn't it be cool if this was like Sheffield, where if it was this big money meet for all the lifters in the Irish PF, the only change would be it's all the lifters in Ireland. And it's the legality, and I kind of use that term loosely, but it's the legality in terms of the IPF. What's the implication there? And it kind of sucks that we're, as a nation, our hands are kind of tied due to affiliation for a body that at times doesn't seem to give a shit. Which I can't speak to the intentions of any committee members in the IPF. I barely know how it runs, but it does suck. Do you know what I mean? But I do wonder if that's feasible, if it's possible. Like, you could argue just as much, like if they're concerned that, if we have USAPL Ireland and Irish PF coming together for this super meet, it might get people to go over to USAPL. Fucking might make people come over to Irish PF as well. Do you know? But I don't know. Yeah.
I think it'd be deadly.
I love that you're talking yourself into the USAPL over this episode.
It's the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's what because the point is that You actually spoke about it. I want to mention this now because you mentioned Sheffield. That changes a precedent now, doesn't it? You mentioned there's a lifter that's going to lift at Sheffield.
Yeah, there's some stuff going on there in terms of jurisdiction, and like this is all. So Article 14 is quite vague, and so a lot of like what's going on is just like based on precedent set. So I think there was a clarification issued by Robert Keller, who I think he's the IPF General Secretary, but he has a committee role in Powerlifting America as well.
Okay.
So they released some clarification about how jurisdiction, quote unquote, works. And it seems like he just has made this up himself because the Article 14 doesn't say anything about any of this, right? But apparently he clarified that until you have membership with the IPF, they don't have jurisdiction over you. So now if we look at Powerlifting America, which is a new federation, which no one has membership with because it's brand new, they're all still either were formerly with or are still with USAPL, which severed from the IPF. Unless you've come to Powerlifting America, they don't have jurisdiction over you. So you could compete in the USAPL as much as you want, like Austin Perkins, and then only when he buys Powerlifting America membership, that's when Article 14 comes into effect or can be enforced on him. So it's kind of this weird situation. It's like, well, why does it work that way? And so what happens if, you retired or something to that effect? But
and you had said this before. I've heard other people talking about it as a loophole. I don't know if you want to deliberately avoid this kind of conversation or anything like that.
Don't give them the out in case they find it. If they find the loophole and plug it up. Let me ask though. I have found, I don't know if, do you guys follow British Powerlifting, BP?
A little bit.
Some of their stuff. You've probably seen some of their like stuff coming out over the last little while that's been getting pretty heavy negative feedback on like their, essentially you can't go to a meet to handle your lifter
if they've
competing if they're on gear or they're competing or only fit, whatever it is. One thing I will definitely say for the Irish PF, they're absolutely running this more as I would rather ask for forgiveness than permission, because there definitely is a degree of like, well, this exists, but we're not.
We're going to do it until we're told.
Yeah, we're not too worried about that. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of probably the best way to do it. Like I would like to believe that at some stage we'll see something like, because Article 14 seemed to only become a big deal in like the last 18 months.
It was only added into the Constitution in 2021, I think. And no one really saw it. I don't think people really took notice of it until it became a problem when the USAPL severed. Before that, the USAPL was the IPF, and the IPF was International Powerlifting. The IPF was drug tested powerlifting. It's only since that all fell apart that this is even a conversation. So it's completely novel,
This is why I like this conversation, because I think it's one of those things where like, if people potentially didn't know you two and just knew that you both coached many lifters and competed in the Irish PF, they would think you were almost exclusively just pro Irish PF and con everything else, which I know is definitely not the case from speaking to both of you. I think you're both just like fans of powerlifting. That seems to be the impression I've gotten. So you've mentioned yourself, Adam, that like you would potentially look at competing in several other meets, and I suppose that doesn't come into conflict with your current role in the committee or anything like that, no?
Not in the committee, no. But I mean, Article 14 is pursuant to coaches and officials.
Maybe not here.
I mean, I don't know, man. So it is what it is, right? But I, as an individual, this is not a stance of the Irish PF, and clarify that. But I, as an individual, this is what I believe in. This is what I think is the right avenue for the sport, and that's how I'm going to act. So do I want to compete in cool meets like the AB series in Germany, which I was going to go over and coach at anyway, because one of my lads is competing at it, and he was egging me on to do it myself. Yeah, I want to go and do that cool event. You know what I mean? And if that puts me in contravention, then it is what it is. And I'm not going to, because I had let myself... I pulled out of, I was meant to do an AB series in March.
April wasn't it?
April, yeah.
It was, I remember your name on the list.
I was really excited. Me and Jack Thornton and a few others were going to do it. And then like there was a big kind of there was an Instagram page made.
All right, I've seen it. Yeah.
An anonymous Instagram page made, and my name was mentioned. I think Jack's name was mentioned, and like the IPF were tagged and all that kind of stuff. Whatever. What can I do about that?
Where are the skies, man? Where are the skies and just use a different name? No one's gonna know.
No.
That's a shame. Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna do what I believe is right. And look, if there's consequences, then it is what it is.
And you were wearing wraps, am I correct?
I'm gonna wear wraps, for a laugh. So I'm gonna do the Phenom meet in March. Do my sleeve total. Planning on dropping down as close to 93 as I can. And and then I'll throw on wraps for 8 weeks or so.
Amazing.
And see how it goes. And then aim to do another Irish PF meet later in the year, probably.
Are you gonna self wrap?
No.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, hell no. No, I'll probably look to travel around once a week just to get wrapped.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
Yeah. And then I'll just do a sleeve session, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, do you know what, man? If I'm not mistaken, Jay Farrant did say he would jump in and do a meet if you put your name down for an ab series.
This is the whole reason I'm doing the meet, man. I'm trying to get him out of retirement.
Man, we're going to have to clip this one bit. I'm going to send it to him. I need to see that motherfucker get back on the platform and to see him do some lifting. He does occasionally get a buzz and he'll jump in and train with us. You know what I mean? Like he did like squats with us for like 4 weeks and he squatted 255.
Yep.
And then was like, fuck this.
Yep.
Not doing this anymore. In a pair of slides as well.
Yeah. Typical, yeah. Typical.
He did use knee wraps, obviously, but yeah, he was in a pair of slides, squatting 255. Like nice, easy RP7. Like,
love it.
Yeah, he's an absolute tank. What about you, Conor? How, like, when we have
not wraps anyway. Wraps just pain the whole like.
It's
the barrier. It's just the barrier to entry. Like if I could do it myself, grand. But if I need to rely on somebody who will consistently come in and knows what they're doing, like Scott, I'm quite sure knows how to wrap things. But it's just a pain in the ass. It's just another barrier to entry. I want to be able to go in and train whenever I want. I was thinking, like, is there a way to make a device that could you could self wrap very effectively? And you know what my inspiration was? On some of the old Adidas weightlifting shoes, they had like the little knob that you could just turn.
The
and
leash tongue.
Yeah, I think something like that, but I don't know how it would work. Anyway, probably wouldn't. But yeah, no. Would I do an ab series or would I do like a wrapped meet or something?
Would you see yourself competing in the next year or two outside of the Irish PF?
Yeah, totally. I would.
But it's easy for us because we're regional level lifters.
This is true.
We're not the national level lifters, so it's easy for us to say.
Don't say that.
We're not.
But it's true.
Yeah, but that's like when people say I have a poverty bench, and then they manifest their poverty bench every meet.
It isn't that. It's just a statement of fact. Because I want to be an international level lifter. I've talked about this on our podcast.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I had hamstringed myself with that line of thinking before, where it's like, maybe as a masters lifter, I'll get there.
I listened, yeah.
Yeah, and I decided actually no, I want to do it as soon as possible. I'm going to work really fucking hard to get there as well. And so. There's no like, I'm not pushing that goal down the road at all. But it just is, it's easy for us to say right now in the current landscape, like, yeah, we'll do this, and this, because we don't
inconsequential.
Yeah, we have no consequences. It might mean, you can't go and work for free for a week at a powerlifting competition abroad. Not the end of the world, Yeah, it will suck, but I'll emotionally recover.
Yes.
You'll enjoy your trip to Germany and
it'll be great.
Be sad there.
Yeah, exactly.
But I definitely would. Like I don't know when exactly, like I said at the start of this, that I had kind of changed my tune a little bit. And yeah, I suppose more just up for the experience. I think it was probably October and being in the driver's seat again and having fun at a meet, like this is class. And then when I heard like two friends of mine being like, I'm going to do USAPL because it's a cool venue and it'll be novel, and to say, I did the first USAPL Ireland meet, it's kind of cool. So I was like, yeah, I do see the appeal to that. And maybe it was apathy towards the whole thing. Like it's going to happen whether I like it or not. I might as well fucking do it. Yeah. And again, it doesn't matter. Like nobody's looking to come out and penalize me or put me on an Instagram page or anything like that. And I use that. Fucking who cares?
Yeah.
I'm called out for everything else, but not for my athletic pursuits. Surprise, surprise. But yeah, no, I definitely will. There's no need for me to stick to the Irish PF route because I actually don't care. I used to say, which is hilarious, I used to say that I want to go to Worlds, man. That's my dream. Where it definitely wasn't. It was just the stupid thing that you say that everyone says, I want to be the best in the world. Whereas you definitely know straight away, it's like, no, you fucking don't. Because you're acting like a dickhead. Like you wouldn't be slamming pints if you were said you want to be the fucking best in the world. So I remember I used to say that, and then there was one point when I was doing my personal training course in Elite, and I can't even remember your man's name who was running it.
Sean McGarty.
Sean McGarty. I knew it's Sean something. But he was like, I'm going to show you how to like sell this thing to a client. And he picked me anyway, and he was selling me this thing. He was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, IPF Worlds. And he was like, I was saying yes to all the things because I thought he just wanted to be the fucking case study. And as I was saying it, I was like, I don't give a shit about that. I don't fucking care. Do you know? So yeah, I've no reason to not do it, I suppose. Maybe just bitterness, or if I want to stick to my guns stupidly by being critical of it, which is ignorant and ridiculous. I reserve the right to change my mind. And then if somebody wants to call me out for changing my mind, sorry, yeah, fine. Whatever.
Well, I mean, to be honest, if history is getting to go on, and this is absolutely like said tongue in cheek, like whenever you do tend to have a pessimistic view on certain topics, those things usually tend to go a lot better down the road. So I will take your pessimism towards the USAPL as an encouragement that it's actually going to make...
What do you mean by that? Yeah, grand. And it's the kind of thing, and I don't doubt that a part of it was like, because I was quite critical of the USAPL, let's say, on our last podcast. I think that's fair to say. And if they took it as, you know what, fuck you, we're going to make this better than your... Great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think that's like we talked about at the start. It's the tricky thing when you're like, right, let's be honest, right? I know, look, you boys make a fucking podcast, right? There's so many people in Irish Powerlifting that will listen to the Odyssey podcast, they'll listen to me, they'll listen to the two Andrews, listen to Shane Story and Lawrence King. You're putting out free content, talking about something that's relevant and interesting to them. Like that takes you taking time out of your day, sit down and do this fucking thing. And I know he's probably talked for like an hour either side of it as well, because that's just typical.
Not anymore.
We're better at that. We don't have time to do that anymore.
Right, fair. But the point is that like, I don't think it should be like a witch hunt when you just happen to make a remark or a comment in the like probably getting to like hundreds, if not thousands of hours now of talking you've got of yourselves on the internet. You're going to put your foot in your mouth.
You're going to make a few boo-boos,
yeah.
to be honest.
You have to be okay with that too, right? It's just
like, man, exhibit A.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, you better be.
But like, this is it. And like, you can walk things back later. Like we talked about, I really don't think that's a huge issue. But I will ask you this, because I mentioned it beforehand. You guys had concerns on your podcast about USAPL. Like, for example, what the difference is, like the testing's different. So would you, or could you compile me a list of things to ask Wade Johnson? Because I can do that. I think I mentioned that to you at the start. I can't, because I think you guys are two guys that are definitely interested in what USAPL Ireland will be, but also coming from the perspective of, well, we'd want clarification on what would be the differences on XYZ, because I think it's something that I wouldn't think to ask, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it like on air.
No.
I'd say right now that I don't. Now this could be total ignorance of me, and if I'm told otherwise, I'll put my hand up and say, yeah, that was total ignorance. I don't think my main concerns can be addressed without the ball just rolling and us seeing where it's going. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Safeguarding, financing, weight classes is what it is. Like, unless they're going to change it, which they're probably limited in doing, probably have no interest in doing. That's just the thing, and it's not a huge one. The safeguarding and the financing is kind of a suck it and see job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I don't have any questions, to be quite honest.
Sweet.
My issues generally with all this kind of stuff arise from what kind of marketing tactics that make me uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a really wide conversation. We've talked about it.
I think it's a great conversation. I love to have it.
So like, race to the bottom marketing, I'm sure you've heard of it.
I've heard you guys talk about it.
Yeah. So it's like, it's where you'll make a claim that you are in some way superior to someone else and what they're doing, rather than just staying in your own lane and doing your thing. Right. And what that does is encourage other people to make the same claim about you.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we're all offering like all of our time for no money.
Yeah.
Because it's a race to the bottom. It has to be, you're just undercutting the next guy. And so, you don't have to be blatantly, obviously undercutting someone to be doing it. You can say something kind of off the cuff, like it's the same level of testing, or we do more testing. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, hold on, a little bit more nuance than that. And when I say that, I'm not saying that, I'm not making a comment about the superiority of the testing either way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, I'm just calling for more nuance here.
Yeah.
And I'm calling for a more open and honest dialogue around what it is and what it isn't. Because if we're just open and honest, it becomes so apparent, like it is to me, and I think it is to you guys and everyone else who has some skin in the game that I've talked to, that they're unique, and have this obvious kind of reason to exist.
Yeah.
They don't need to justify it with like, well, we're better than this for this reason. And it's like, no, we're just different. And we're running in our own lanes.
No need for one-upmanship. It just it degrades the whole thing. It was like, oh, well, I'm going to do that. I was like, bro, you're enough.
Mm-hmm.
You're enough. It's the fact
Very
of the
wholesome, Conor.
So that's me. That's why, like, I don't have any questions for the dude, because it's from here. It's just a case of let's see how the thing shakes out, and I'm genuinely excited. I can't wait because it's 3 dudes who I trust. To make a fucking awesome product. You know,
and even in that, I think that's the critical thing of like the reason I think it's important that when you said that, like you specified the testing might not necessarily be the same. It's not saying one is better or one is worse, but like give more nuance. I think that's important because by asking that question, it's not saying to them, I don't trust what you're saying. I'm asking you to clarify further so I know more.
Yeah.
And I don't think people should take that as a challenge. They should take it as an opportunity because it means somebody's probably a little bit interested.
It's curiosity rather than like an interrogation.
Exactly.
So what do you mean by that? It's just like, I don't know.
It's like, for example, when you guys made your podcast and you talked a little bit about what we did in the panel, that was great for me. That was really good for me because it was like, no, don't get me wrong. I told you, it's like this happened at the end of a very long weekend. Like it was, my head was up my arse.
Like right now.
Actually, 100%.
But, and in fairness, you guys are holding it together. How many cans of rain, Adam?
I think 9.
That's a lot of fluids, like.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Never mind, sodium is the
2
point
coffees.
that I fucking
3 coffees, actually, as well, man.
Jesus
Let's go.
Christ.
Yeah.
I don't know what
Adam's just going to be like tweaking out in the hotel.
No,
lying in bed.
I'll be the baby, man. I'll be straight asleep.
But the point is that like, that helps me learn more how to, if I have the opportunity to do something like that again, because I think I've said this on this before. I'd love to do like a sit down with like loads of coaches.
100%.
We talked about this too.
It's tough. It's super cool to have a space like this where and it's neutral territory as well. It's not like you're coming to my gym, into my house, and we're doing this. This is Switzerland. You can come in, savage setup. You're relaxed. It's like nobody's on your case. You're not in hostile territory, and you can have an open and honest like panel discussion. We said we would.
I tried to do this. I tried to do this before, not in this format where like a conversation, but I don't know if you recall. I think it was just before I knew of you. Anyway, I was 20 years old and like all in and trying to start up my business and whatnot. But I really also cared about the sport, cared about coaching a lot. It was then more so, but still is like my obsession. Like spend a lot of my day thinking about random stupid bullshit, surrounding this. But at the time I created a Facebook group and every single person who had some claim to the word coach in the sphere of powerlifting, I messaged and asked if they wanted to join this group called Irish Powerlifting Coaches for exactly this. Because I wanted there to be like this neutral territory for us all to exchange ideas. Because, it was kind of around the period of time where there was lots of like pointing fingers at different methodologies, like RPE is stupid and all this kind of thing. It was still when RPE was controversial.
Yeah. Which funny in hindsight.
Yeah, which is mad. But actually the tagline for that group was a high tide raises all ships.
It's a great line. I don't mean to be here when I say it.
I truly believe in it. But yeah.
You quote it every episode. I hear it every time.
Love it, man.
Yeah.
I love that shit. Like, it's true. Like, I think most of people's problem, like anyone that doesn't like someone in powerlifting, I think if you were to just sit down and talk for 20 minutes, you are 100% at least most of the way on the right page, on the same page. You're doing the same thing.
Yep.
Like, whether that's differences in coaching approach, which I think is 90% the same shit anyway, whether that's what you think the future of the sport is, where you want to lift, what rule set you think is best. Fundamentally, I think most people are on the same. It's why things like this are fun. Like I've had people say to me, "Why did you have this guest on the podcast?" Whoever. Like
I've said that to you a bunch.
Did you actually?
The Westerns, yeah, we're both smashed.
Because I was rode off, man.
I was like, Ian's taking all this criticism super well, and Ian's like blasted.
Man, I'm fucking super open to it. Like, I've no emotional attachment to these things. It's actually really fun. It's nice. It's why I do the anonymous question boxes, because I sometimes get like blasted in. I'm like, that's kind of funny. Like, I can't share them because of what they say, but like, in any case,
this is relevant to the conversation that we were having about creating the Irish PF discussion group, because we want open, honest dialogue, and how
Irish powerlifting coaches, not Irish PF discussion. Important.
It sounds pedantic, but it's actually not. It's a worthwhile distinction. The expectation of people being open to open and honest dialogue is naive. And because I had said this in response to the criticism that I had recently received, but we say at the end of every podcast, if you disagree, if you have a different opinion, if you have opposing evidence, talk to us. And when I said that to these guys, I was like, but we say this every time. It's like, you're an idiot if you think people are actually going to do that. And that pisses me off, because I know if you had any of those things, if you ticked any of those boxes to something that we said, you would say it. And the same to you. If you said something I fundamentally disagree with, that's not just your own flavor, your own take on things, I would say it to you. And I think you started that probably with the hope that people would be open and honest and hash shit out. And if you have a look at the group, it was a ghost town. Nothing was happening. And that's disappointing, because I want people to be able to have open and honest conversation. And it's you might think that I ramble on the podcast and I say mad shit because I just don't think. But I'm okay with being vulnerable and being out there and exposing myself, because that's like I'm lowering my shield because I want you to do the same.
Yeah.
It doesn't end up that way.
Yeah.
It kind of gets me in trouble a little bit, but I really, really want that open and honest dialogue. And I'll say right now that I'm open to being called stupid, or I'm open to changing my mind, because other people should do the same. And it'd be unreasonable for me to say, you should change your mind, if I'm fucking not observed to have been doing it myself. So I would love to have 3-4 people, whatever you can fit around this table, to come around and legitimately hash it out. And that's why I was saying to you beforehand about, would you have anyone here that you fundamentally disagree with? I think you'd be few and far between. As you said, like, we're all doing the same shit, but those kind of conversations are fun, and you learn and you grow, or they learn and you grow, and ideally you reach some level of understanding, you build a golden bridge and you meet together on it. Fuck me, that doesn't happen, and it's really disappointing, and it's upsetting, and I would probe people, or I would critique people, or I'd say things in an effort to fucking have this dialogue. But instead it's like, that Conor Campbell fella's a dickhead. I'm like, no, there's a little bit more to it. It's just it's frustrating and it's disappointing. But I would like that to happen with the USAPL thing, or with the coaches thing, because a fucking high tide raises all ships. And it's that influx of different opinions and stressors and ways of doing things helps the whole powerlifting ecosystem, as you described it very, very well. That makes it grow. And it's that insular approach that the IPF has taken, the IPF is taken, is why it's probably going to fall to shit. You know? So that's disappointing. You know, it's tough. I struggle with that a lot, weirdly. But, you know, but it'd be cool if Iron Odyssey podcast, whatever you want to call it, comes together and we're like, let's fucking hash some shit out, especially if it's live. Because then you can't dodge a question. But at the same time, the guy who responds to your anonymous question isn't going to sit there in front of you live and say X, Y, Z, which is also disappointing. But
I have a question. It's kind of on this vein, but it's been on my mind for most of the podcast. Why did you start your podcast?
That's a very good question. I had this, like, when I started here with Dan, like, I had like I was like, I just want to start a podcast. This motherfucker made me do like a month of like a course to like learn how to do it properly.
Awesome.
And like really nail down the why. And I think a lot of people start podcasts to like scratch their own ego because they want to hear themselves talk, right? Which is fair enough. That might be true. And that's okay.
To that, 100%.
That's okay. It's okay that those things exist. I think this specifically is because I think there's so many like interesting people, not just in powerlifting, but in the fitness realm or in training or whatever it might be. And it's so easy to, you know, reduce them down to their most simplistic attributes that you know them as, you know what I mean? And kind of trivialize that, you know, you make them so like simplistic, but like, you know, from living inside your own heads, people are actually quite complex. You know what I mean? Like even talking about what we're saying here about we should be open and be receptive to healthy discourse to improve what we do. But of course, people react emotionally because everything's a fucking attack, you know? Like, so it's partly to give people a position or a room or a fucking space to talk through what they do and to be able to guide that. Partly because if we look specifically at the people I've had in from powerlifting, and this kind of ties back into the point just before Adam had to go hockey up a lung, about like, why do I pick the people I pick to come on and talk? One, they're mostly because they're fuckers I like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if I've only managed to speak to them in passing, or they say things that I want to know more about and I get to ask them. And then maybe it's, I think there's things they say that I think other people should hear. And then there's all, like, selfishly, there's an element of like, well, I forced you to hang out with me for 2 hours. It's very good for like networking.
Great for networking. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's also because in the way I talk about maybe like trying to bring up everything, let's say, even within Irish powerlifting, like I want to see the dial move forward. I want there to be more stuff. I want there to be more things. Well, this is my skin in the game. You know, like, I pay for this because I want this to be a thing. I want us to eventually get to a point where we can have roundtables with coaches. And maybe, you know, fucking having Ben Harrison sitting here chatting to me means Ben Harrison's good friends with me, and means like I'm good friends with Adam, and I'm good friends with Conor, and I'm good friends with Jay, and I'm good friends with fucking Gar and Alex. I know he's gone to fucking Oz now, but whoever. And we can all sit down and say, let's talk about powerlifting.
Yep.
And whatever it might be. Now, just to reply to another thing that Conor was saying about why I don't think like you can really have combative discourse, is because I think the people who would be receptive to come and sit on a podcast and talk, let's say with you or me or Adam or whoever else, we probably agree on most things. And if you were to make like a very good point that countered something, I'd say, go, well, sure, you got me there. That's a great point. I actually think you're correct. Like, you would actually probably just do that. You know what I mean? Like, you would probably, like, I've learned things from listening to you guys talk. Like a lot of things, or you've reframed the way I've thought of certain things just by fucking talking to each other on a podcast on Riverside or whatever, you know what I mean? That's a massive benefit to me. And part of the motivation for this was to be able to do that same thing. Like, there's so many people now that know Jake Brennan actually isn't a big awful person that just chews D-ball, you know, every day of the week. He's a character, and he is a big bollocks, but like he is actually a good guy. You know what I mean? Same with like, now people know a bit more about why Eamon Hartford's Eamon Hartford, why Melvin Conta is Melvin Conta, why
James Hanley, he's a prick, but he's right.
He is.
He's always right.
Or like, more specifically, one of the big ones for me was having Jay on.
Yeah.
Like, because I know who Jay is, because I've spent a lot. Like, I cannot tell you guys enough for what Jay has done for me in the time I've been in powerlifting. He doesn't have to. Didn't have to do fucking thing for me. I'm not like some world class lifter that he can like shower praise on. You know, I'm just some dickhead. And he fucking like, just, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this, and this during COVID, my gym closed and Jay let me PT in abs until the landlord locked us out of abs. So like, and I was like, how much do you want? He's like, don't worry about it. He didn't have to do that. I was in abs at that stage a year. You know, I was just another guy. And there were members that aren't there anymore that were complaining about me doing it. Because like, shouldn't be doing that. It's dangerous. There's fucking COVID, the restrictions and all. Like, so he hooked me up when he didn't fucking have to. You know, so I was very happy to be able to give him a platform to talk about what he's passionate about and part of where he's come from. Like, I mean, I think people need to understand the unique perspective a guy has when he's like fucking been driving army tanks and shit. Like,
Yeah.
And then like, I think anyone who's ever heard him talk about his kid and how he grew up can maybe maybe you won't fully understand him, but you'll at least empathize with the fact that like, he's just a fucking guy doing his best. You know what I mean? And that's a kind of a big deal. And then shit like this, I can corner you two at the end of a very long day and pin you down at a podcast studio at 10 o'clock at night, and I can get Dan to leave his lovely missus and his kids to drive around here to open this place up and set all this up for us to do it. Maybe that's let me ask you, what was your motivation to set up the Odyssey podcast?
Good question. Maybe it's two-pronged. Maybe it's not as straightforward a vision as that, and it's definitely changed over time.
It has
a lot. I think initially it was like the typical like, well, we have really long conversations about stuff. We should just record it and make content.
Yeah.
For me, quite simply, it's a really, really low-hanging fruit way to produce content. And you kind of have to produce content these days. And it's funny because when I was driving up, I was just randomly rumbling through thoughts. when I wasn't listening to the podcast. And something that often kind of pisses me off is seeing new coaches come in to the sport and immediately dive into content. It's like, no, coach, like learn how to do that, like it's going to suck, but like, I mean, like we've already established, you're not getting into this to be a millionaire. It's going to be pretty shitty at the start. You're going to do lots of work for very, very little reward, and that might last quite a while actually. But coach, like do that first. And then when you have something to say backed up by, years of experience, then you can start making content or having kind of unique insights or perspectives on things. So I think we can offer some unique perspectives on different things. And I often think that our conversations on stuff, which are flowing and evolving live, which is what our conversations were before we started recording them, I think there's some value there. And, it can be slapped and labeled content.
Yeah.
So and I hate like, I don't know. I've done the whole like standing in the gym by myself recording videos for like Odyssey, closed groups and things like that. I just don't like it. And I don't really love writing blogs because I feel like I just end up writing the same shit that everyone else is writing, So that was kind of it for me, and it maintains it. And networking. Yeah. Networking, like we kind of, because our schedules got quite busy, we stopped having so many guests on, but there was a while there where we had a lot of guests.
I listened,
yeah. Yeah. And they were fun because you'd have long conversation. Like our podcast with Arthur Lynch stands out to me as like one of my favorites, because I hadn't talked an awful lot. I've been, rubbing shoulders with Arthur for a while, but I haven't talked an awful lot to him like that. And we just had this like 4-hour sit down chat. And it was class, and like a really nice chance to get to know the guy, to the point where now I can just go up and be like, Arthur, how's it going? But that's kind of me.
I love that. I'll put my hands up first and say that you said there's an ego element to it. Yeah, a fucking lot of mine is an ego thing, and I'm okay with that. Like, because you would struggle with sitting down, putting the camera in front of you, and say, "Hi guys, biopsychosocial." I kind of like an element to that. I'm not shy about saying that. There's definitely parts of that. I do love, like I said, the long conversations, like the depth of it, and digging into it, because like you meet a lot of people through powerlifting, but they're all very surface level interactions. And every now and then, I know you know what I'm talking about, when you're having a conversation, a very surface level conversation with something, and you see like a glint, and you're like, "What was that?" I want to dig into that a little bit more. And Arthur was one of the people who, now we had our conversation with him beforehand, but I think he came up to me at Nationals in March, and he was asking about my other job as an environmental consultant, and he made some very well-informed comment about pros and cons of wind farms, and I was just like, where did that come from? I was like, we got to talk about it, and we since have. And I love Arthur to bits. He's one of my favorite people to talk to. And like your experience with Arthur on the podcast, mine was with Jack Thornton. And you kind of knew him better than I had. And you were like, "Jack's fucking great skin." And I was nearly worried, because we sat down with him for a couple of hours beforehand, recorded for ages, chatted for ages afterwards. I was like, shit, what did we actually say in the podcast? I don't know. And I love seeing that, like you say, and I think it's very admirable that you seem to have picked some people who a lot of people would have a very negative surface level opinion of, but you might know them better and say, they're more than that. Like, and I want to show people the real you, as kind of cringe as that seems, but like, there's more. You're not a villain. You're a character with depth and complexity. And I want people to appreciate that and not judge you so harshly based on some maybe ill-informed thing that you shared on Instagram, or some offhand comments you made on a podcast at one point. I love that kind of depth, and this is weird. It's a very weird tangent, a very weird place to bring it. A feature of our conversations. In our conversations, I love in films when the good guy or the bad guy has like this. It makes you feel really confused and conflicted. And the depth, the character, I really, really appreciate. I don't think there's good or bad people. I think people can do good things, can do bad things, and trying to understand why people think the way they do, or why people make certain decisions, and sitting down, especially in a room like this where it's fucking you and me, pal, and you forget there's a fucking camera right there, and that you're mic'd up. you can unravel, and hopefully people don't incriminate themselves or anything like that, but you can just get a fuller appreciation of who somebody is and what they're about, and it helps your understanding as well. And I love that, and I'm super eager to get more than just powerlifters or powerlifting coaches on. We've often talked about it. It's weird to try and sequence it, because you had often said that I want to exhaust all of our powerlifting people and then we'll do it, which has validity.
Good luck.
Has validity, because otherwise it's like this mishmash kind of random, like.
And I'm coming at it from the angle of like, small business owner, solely like doing this with a large motivation to continue to grow my powerlifting coaching business. And so if you've got like environmental consultant, what I would love to, I love, like I consume nearly no powerlifting content. Most of the content I consume is random stuff. It could be environmental. It's mostly like health and health science related stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of most of what I consume in my free time.
League of Legends, don't lie.
And League of Legends.
I was like, bleep that out. Bleep that out. They can't know.
But yeah, that's where again our motivations.
That's
differ
totally.
slightly.
That's totally. And it's terrible that I'm like, will I do my own thing? And then I was like, no, that's just silly, because we have a great dynamic, and I think that's another thing that I think makes it work so well. And I don't want to be big headed when I say that, but it's the fact that we're two sides of the same coin, and that we have this shared thing. I think what makes it work so well. So it's the love of the conversations and the complexity and the depth and the love of the game, even though I deny it a lot and I don't know anything about it or any of the people doing it. It is this weird abstract love of the game, and my enormous ego.
Yeah,
that's the podcast.
Well, I appreciate your reasons a lot, because it feels like it's of course there's some self motivations there.
Oh, 100%.
What the hell are we doing if not for that, right? Of course, that should be just a base level assumption. But it sounds like you're really trying to build bridges.
It's the idea.
Yeah. From this person to that person to this person to that person. All of a sudden, you might have built your own bridge from this person to that person, and they connect. And now these two people have a bridge to each other. That's fucking cool.
It does seem that way, actually, because you know the people you're having on, and it's like you're building bridges for them, or it's nearly like you're trying to help your mates be appreciated as you appreciate them. Do you know?
It's also in this tiny community where that's particularly valuable.
Well, it comes back to what we talked about during COVID, and like there was that like animosity between people in different clubs or different gyms. So rather than saying like, well, this is just the thing, it's like, surely there's things we can do to start breaking down those barriers. I'm not saying I'm exclusively out to do that, but I think before this podcast ever became a thing, there was a great softening of that. But like, it's a peek behind the curtain for like, powerlifters are fucking cool people. They do cool stuff. You know what I mean? Some of them are fucking great big weirdos, and some of them are just your average Joe that happens to be incredibly strong. And they all have quite diverse and nuanced backgrounds. Like, so James Hanley, he's a powerlifter, but he's also a dad. He's a business owner. He very good marketer, and he's very opinionated. So he has a million and one other things that he does outside of lifting weights and can give unique perspectives on that. Same with you guys. And this is what this is all about. It's like, I like that you guys make a podcast, because I get to listen to a podcast and I can't listen to my fucking own podcast. Actually, I really like, it struck a chord when you were like, wait, when you were talking about the Jack Thornton one, what was the actual podcast? What did we talk about? Every time, no idea. People, I love the podcast with XYZ. I'm like, no idea what we talked about. Yeah. Like, people keep bringing up the thing about Melvin and the asterisks to me about people on gear, and I'm like, I don't remember that. I have no idea when he said. I have no idea when he said that. And I just remember buzzing off Melvin. He's a good guy, like, And then same with Beck. I had Beck on yesterday, so that will have come out by the time we've talked. Like, this one comes out, but like, I have no idea what the fuck we talked about. I do remember at the end, I very purposefully brought up getting him to explain why he walked from the airport to Abs.
Great, yeah.
And why he loves eating cheesecake and pizza despite being lactose intolerant.
Because they're fucking delicious.
Just tolerate it, bro.
I would take it. I would. No?
Yeah.
I know you would.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not fucking going to pizza and cheesecake. Particularly pizza.
But he's like a big lemon cheesecake.
He loves the lemon
cheesecake. That sounds like a questionable.
That's a Kerry thing, I'm telling you.
Fair enough. Yeah. There was some other thing. No, he's an enigma. I think I called him announcing him on the platform or on the podium today, he was the biggest mystery in Irish
You
powerlifting.
did say that, yeah.
Did you say that, or did you label him?
I had said that in the podcast.
It's very appropriate.
Yeah. This is why I had him on, because I want, like, people need to know, like,
So what's your deal, bro?
yeah, he's a good guy. Actually, incidentally, when you were talking earlier on about like people that want to go to worlds and like they want to live like an athlete, that is Beck Phillips, man.
Mm-hmm. But he lives it. Like I really rate that his actions are like congruent with what he says. Yes. A great point of admiration for anybody, no matter I suppose what you say. Like if you do it, then right on, man.
Like he's like. And I've never, like, he spoke very openly about why, I think I mentioned this earlier on, I can't remember if we talked about it.
You might have said it beforehand, or we might have said it after we pressed record.
But in any case, he spoke very openly about why he lifts in the Irish PF versus BP. And I think it, like, speaks volumes to not only the way the federation is run, but also, like, the scene we have. Like, Ireland, as you said many times,
the ecosystem, as Adam, it's a perfect terminology for it.
In our episode, like, that's pretty much the one thing I remember saying and harping on about is how much I do believe in Irish powerlifting. And this is before any of the USAPL bullshit happened. My position is completely unchanged. I think we have a very unique, and I can't put my finger on what it is or why it is, but we do just seem to have a unique brand of powerlifting.
It's very Irish powerlifting.
Yeah.
As silly as that sounds, there's something like inherently Irish about how we do things. And it's fucking great.
Yeah, we're all fair rowdy, like,
But it's so familiar.
Yeah.
Is the way to do it. And it's a little bit lackadaisical. And we can be loud and we're unashamed and this kind of thing. And I really love it.
And everyone loves it.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Fact,
all the nations love the Irish team.
Yeah. You probably noticed it in Iceland. Is that the people were flocking to try and work in with us. The Brits were great to work in with, and they loved it. And they were buzzing off us a bit, and there was this great camaraderie. The Dutch team, I was going to say the Italians, but they were different to work with. But I haven't been to a Worlds yet, and I'm sure it's even more so. I think you said the Canadians.
Canadians are cool.
Like I feel like we're also. They're like the North American Irish. They have this just kind of way about them. It's friendliness as well, I think, to it.
Yeah.
But it's relatively new. Like we had talked about early on when we started getting involved, the warm-up room used to be fairly hostile. And there's some clubs or some smaller individuals are still a little bit hostile and everyone's kind of like, come on, bro. And like in the past, even with City Gym coaches, I remember saying to some people, I don't even know who it was like, oh, what do you want next for a warm-up? And they're like holding back information as if we're using it as a ploy against them. But that has totally just gone away. And now it's so collaborative and
we set out, that was a concerted effort.
Yeah.
Like we said that, a few years ago. It was when I like formalized your relationship with Odyssey Strength.
Yeah.
That I was like, man, I want to be the best warm-up room presence, and I want that to be like part of our brand.
That was effectively the mission statement, and it's something I've been so proud of, and it's especially when people come up to us or people message us, are like, "You're gonna be at this meet?
Nice.
Oh, can I warm up with you?" And it's like that is such a huge compliment, like that's nearly nicer than.
And now it's spread,
yeah.
So 100%. It's like it's not even traced to us. It's like that's the norm now, and that's so fucking cool.
Absolutely, and it's maybe going international. Or it's more commonplace at international meets. 2 that I've been to. Maybe Westerns is like a kiddie international and it doesn't really matter. Although Iceland did not seem that way. There was fucking maniacs, like savage lifters at it. But it's at those meets. Maybe it's just the meets that I've been at. Maybe it's me.
Well, who's loading the
Maybe
bars?
I'm
Who was loading the bars? The Irish team.
Yeah, in fairness.
Never mind.
Yeah.
The Brits were helping out. But yeah.
No, in fairness, right, you're right. They were grand to work with. There was also about 6 of them, and there was 3 of you.
Yeah.
And Conor Kiernan did actually come down and give us a good dig.
He put in a great shift. I'll always say that.
Great in the warm room.
Yeah.
So,
great in the warm room.
like, you boys loaded for fucking everybody.
You do.
I do.
Like,
one of the mots got up and threw a fucking 15 on a bar at once, I think. They never loaded for us, though. They only loaded for their lifters.
Always.
Yeah. Or we'll take this. It was like, you'll wait your turn is what you'll do, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now, look, in fairness, the fact that they're even communicative and working in that's fine. But I will absolutely attest to that. Anytime I've walked into like an Irish PF Open where it can be this hodgepodge of people that are brand new to the sport and their handlers, their best mate, like,
chaos.
Where the fuck do we go? Like
total chaos.
If I see the chaos guys or I see the Odyssey guys, I'm like, excellent. I have people to work
it's
in.
people on it. we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah,
you know the score.
And now it's very clear for that person coming in with no idea. Okay, this is organized. I'm gonna just be here and I'll fall in. That happened today.
Yes,
and it happens at every meet now. Whereas before they would have just caused
havoc.
Yeah, because they were just like, running around the place. It's like, I need the bar. You need the bar. You're going out in 5 minutes. What are you talking about? And all of a sudden, the whole thing's derailed and everyone's affected. Whereas that just doesn't happen as much, if at all, anymore.
The federation has come on a lot in the
powerlifting,
7 years. Yeah, no, it's something to be very proud of. And I suppose now, as we were saying with USAPL and Ab Series, it's only more so. It's like maybe the internals of the meet, if that makes sense, have been improving and improving and improving. How it's ran, the warm-up room, but the externals like the flavor, the showmanship, the venues, more of the external stuff is kind of improving now and is set to improve. And I suppose it's kind of like you said, once somebody does it or once it's done the first time, you're like, oh shit, we can do that? It's like, okay, what else can we do?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Look at the evolution. Like, we now have like independent media popping up around powerlifting.
Yeah.
Why is that?
That was never a thing.
Because there's an interesting story to be told, even in the most like seemingly uninteresting places. There's stories,
Totally.
It's the reason it's evolving that way. It's not just happening, out of kind of misplaced optimism.
Does anyone listening remember No Lift media packages? Yeah.
Mm.
They were the first guys to do it, and we're like, we can do that. And now I think everyone competing should probably get something. Like, how many times are you gonna get to do this thing? Get a picture. Get your pictures taken. Get them framed. Throw them on the wall. Throw them on the fridge. Whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
That's it. Cool. As like you've mentioned before, just there, in the time the federation's been around, there's obviously been a rapid evolution. And I actually think it's a good thing that people say, well, why don't we try this now? Why don't we try that? Because it shows, and that's the thing, as the sport gets bigger, because it will, because it's already bigger than it was in 2020, let's say, more people will come in with fresh ideas and that will level up the game. And it will be imperative for the likes of yourselves, myself, everyone else to adapt with those times, to stay relevant, to stay in it, but also it will fundamentally still be squatting, benching and deadlifting, but everything around it can shift and change for the better and to match more what the current thing is. Everybody has a fucking TikTok now. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I was thinking about that now as well, because you were talking about spectatorship, and I don't know why I seem to have this uneasy internal relationship with it. Maybe I feel like it's putting the focus or the onus where it shouldn't be. Like, the focus should be on the lifter experience. They're not mutually exclusive. Like, they can have coexist. This spectator experience, and you were talking about, let's say, building up the rivalries or the individuals. Like, City Gym do this really, really well, and I love it when they do it, that they do an interview with Dawn Stacey. They do an interview with Owen Cotillion Man, and it's you're building these characters and you're building these storylines and these plot lines, and it can kind of culminate, and it's really cool. At the same time, I know social media has really helped this, but at the same time, I wonder, is it bringing in a brand of people who see the highlight reel, will stay in it short term when it's gains, and then when it comes to a bad day, they're like, that's me.
Because just bring in more people.
Yeah,
that's true. And some, like, if you bring in 100 people, some of them are going to drop off anyway. If some of them are maybe misled, quote unquote, misled about the reality of being in the sport long term, maybe a few others. But I suppose you're going to hang on to some people who are in it for the love of the game. And maybe that's the stance you should take, that if you cast a wide net, you're going to catch a lot of people, and there's going to be people who are going to stick it out for the love of the game, or because it suits, or because it's something good and active and healthy they can do, whatever reason. So social media probably is the way to go. And like we had said, I don't know if we're probably recording at this stage, that we're talking about your guys at Ab Series, or we were talking about, let's say, Leisha Quinn's injury arc coming back and smoking our international competitions. Like, that's cool as fuck.
Yeah.
And I've seen a load of people, and I've had signups who I see in the, and I've told Leisha this, I've had signups where I see in their form, like, how did you get exposed to powerlifting, or whatever the question is, and they're like, oh, I saw Leisha Quinn do it, and I was like, oh, I can do that too. That's amazing. Or seeing, like, people in the fucking Leinster Leader, or there was the Limerick newspaper. I know Lauren Milan worked in and around the Limerick, whatever the
she
Limerick
was in
newspaper
Urban Barba,
was really, really helpful in putting a lot of the Limerick-based powerlifters, especially Limerick-based female powerlifters, into the newspaper there and giving them a bit of exposure. And it's good for the businesses, the gyms that are there. It's good for fucking everybody. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe the exposure is cool as fuck. And because there's sexy pictures that Ken throws a nice filter on to show my fucking bicep veins, that I throw it up on Instagram and people are like, looks flashy as fuck. Yeah, I wanna do that shit. Or I had people coming up to me on Stephen's Day in the Rooster Minute, like, I saw you on that podcast, and I was like, oh, you mean my podcast that I like promote like a motherfucker? It's like, no, the one with that Ian fella. And I was like, all right, fair enough. You listen to my podcast too. That they're like, oh, I thought you were a bollocks in school, but I saw you on this thing and that was cool as fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, you thought I was a bollocks in school? Like, but it's pulling some people in where they may not have been before. And I suppose the diversity of media that's out there could catch different people. And you had spoken recently about writing blogs is like, this has been said before. But at the same time, I had a really good conversation with Raquel about this. I only knew through your podcast. That's how I kind of came about her or met her. It's obvious to you.
Building bridges, baby.
Building fucking bridges. Building them golden bridges. It's obvious to you, and you know it, and you know your lifters know it. But you don't know how many people are going to pop up on it. Or like, and I often make jokes about this. I could see another video. It's like, what's a pivot week? Or here's how you do an RDL. It's obvious to you. It's obvious to me. It's obvious to you, especially because our Instagram algorithm is going to show out show us what we put out. One person who did not know that might see it and say, that's very helpful. Do you know? So as redundant as it might feel or as it might seem, and I definitely feel that in trying to stay semi-regular with putting out carousels or reels, whatever it is, if it catches one person or puts a topic in a slightly different way or in a slightly different medium, that it might be picked up by somebody, fuck it. It's worth it for the couple of seconds that it took me to plump my camera down and say, biopsychosocial. Yeah. Fuck it. Yeah. It's worthwhile. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know. And that's an avenue about growing the sport. That's why I'm trying to remember the relevance of this tangent, but it's growing the sport. It's the spectatorship and it's your fucking whatever. So
let me give you two replies to what you're saying. Because I think there's two things that you tipped off there that I think I can like elaborate on, and I very much agree with everything you're saying. So we talk about, you mentioned like you write a blog post, it's something that's been written before. It probably has 10 different times, but maybe somebody's read those 10 blogs and it didn't make sense. Maybe you'll have the words the 11th time that they're like, maybe that's the light bulb moment. Yeah. Maybe all the other blogs were right, but maybe this is where they're in the right frame of mind to actually receive the information. Like I make a joke to people like, we don't need another lat pull down tutorial, right? But maybe the one that you send to your client are like, oh, that makes way more sense than all the videos I watched on YouTube because I didn't know how to engage my lat. You were just like, pull the fucking thing down. You know what I mean? And that worked for me. So I would say that you can receive the same information a dozen different ways, and it's just one series of words said by a person you were willing to trust. That was the one you're receptive to. Yeah. Then with the idea of making things, let's say we talk about things like spectator friendly in powerlifting, right? This is an example I would give. If you look at some meets, right? Whatever meet, doesn't matter. Occasionally, the people in the audience are going to be on their phone. But they're not looking at the platform, they're looking at the phone. I would much rather them go on, and I would rather have somebody, because this is something Jay is very good for. Whenever something happens on the platform at Abs, it is immediately on social media. And he does that on purpose, because he's like, not only do I want the people watching to go, fuck, I better get on that live stream and see what's going on.
It's at the same time, like you can log on. Like, I haven't missed it. This was like 2 weeks ago or something like that. Yeah.
And not only that, the people at the meet are like, oh yeah, shit, I'm here. You know what I mean? So they're constantly getting the feedback of what they're actually engaged in. And then, like you mentioned, the lads in Division 2. Division 2, I'm sure most people listen, I'm sure you boys know, it's first-timers, people under 400 dots. So it's not the big heavy hitters that you have in the Abs Pro that are fucking lifting ridiculous weights. These are your average gym goer that's getting pretty strong. And people were super bought into these four lads going against each other. Yeah. All because we utilized Instagram stories and CapCut. That's it. Well, I had a group chat with them where they were been less than polite to each other. But
tearing the heads off each other.
There was a couple of bets made, and those will be followed up on later. In fact, one of the lads gets a tattoo as total on one of the other lads.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's rough. I'm hands off on that one.
Rough.
Wow.
But the point is, the stakes were high, and it paid off because all the lads got a lot of PBs. You know what I mean? Now there was some like very like huge, like full send third attempts on the deadlifts, but fuck it. Fuck it. Like,
you gotten a few sign-ups out of it too.
People, man, I had a fucking ball. I was beating the shit out of those boys.
Yeah, I saw it.
This was the joke because like Jerkules was like memeing it, and I was like, man, they asked me to do that. I said, except Jacob. Jacob was for me. I wanted to fucking kill him. He had a great day though, in fairness to him. But yeah, like that's exactly what I mean when I say that. There's more we can do that when the person is sitting in the audience, if they're like, who's this lifter? I want to know more about them. I can go on to the Irish PF page or the Odyssey Strength page, and maybe there's a lifter profile just for that weekend. Maybe it's like in your highlights or in your stories. Here is fucking Matthew Henry returning to the platform after XYZ amount of time off with this injury, coming now to achieve this goal for 2024 international fucking qualification, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, oh, so that guy's trying to do this. And he's going against this guy and this handsome divil that came in third. Do you know what I mean? So this is my point. And all of that is very low barrier to participate. Like there's no, that's not a big job. It just needs to start. And once the template's in place, it can run itself. Somebody can be shown how to do it in 10 minutes. It doesn't even have to be the same person at every meet. And it will just work.
Yep.
And it just takes it starting and it gets more people involved. And it's good for everyone. Obviously people care more about and you could do this on an open level as well. You know what I mean? It wouldn't matter. You just pick like 10 lifters, whoever, and maybe you could make it a club thing. Like your club is going to do your stuff for you. Like this is why I was saying at the start, I like your guys' review podcast because you talk about your lifters, what their training's been like and what they've done. Maybe I just care because I'm a fucking dork for the coaching side of things. But like, I think that's good content. And I would encourage everybody to listen to check out the Odyssey Strength Podcast. But in any case, that's when I say spectator experience. Obviously, there's the macro stuff, what's going on at the meet other than the lifting and how we can utilize the time better. Sure. Right. But then there's also those micro elements. What could we be doing with the free media available to us that we have with the likes of YouTube, that we have with the likes of Instagram, or even things now like TikTok? Because like it or not, that's what all the youngins are on. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm trying to say. Boys, we have been going for a long time. I'm going to start wrapping us up. Do you guys have any more thoughts to explore before we get out of here?
No, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that was good. Thank you again for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's nothing I can say in short. There's a lot of different things, especially like this is the terrible thing. It only kind of snowballs as we go into the conversation. Which I think is a great sign of a good conversation. But no, I really do. This has been very, very productive, and it's done more for my acceptance of alternate avenues of lifting and in my appreciation of maybe the macro goal of all the different shareholders in powerlifting.
For me, that honestly, as I sat here, and I definitely took a more kind of sit back and listen approach to this one, because I'm wrecked and a bit sick. But that was a highlight of the episode for me. Was sitting here and observing that happen in
evolution
live.
of Conor.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, like I'm totally open to it as well, and it's.
We just got to get a few points into him now, and it gets really interesting.
And another thing, I'd love to do that. Actually, I should not say that. I'd love to do that. I'd said it a bunch to Keane Robinson is another guy. This is me fucking going off on one, but having like a private podcast that with a couple of cans and just going off on one. But if you said something off color, which believe it or not could happen at some point, it's fucking getting out, you know.
So here's a piece of trivia I'll finish on. So
Jesus
our
Christ,
first iteration of a podcast was...
All right, yeah, this, okay.
That's
less incriminating than I thought it would be.
We referred to it was called Beers and BUP. BUP standing for... what
Bottoms up about.
Bottoms up.
You know exactly what it is.
I hate that I called it... it was bottoms up periodization.
Okay.
I fucking hate that I ever call it that, because it is a bottom up approach, and that's such a ubiquitous term, and it doesn't mean anything.
Literally,
it doesn't mean anything. You know, people would try and pin us down like it means this, it means that. You know, you just stole Mike Teixeira's
emergency.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, it's just a philosophy, a really basic training philosophy. But anyway, it was beers and BUP, and the podcast was we would drink craft beers because we were both into
craft beers at the time. Yeah.
I know I don't
losers.
Don't like them at all. But we would drink like pretty high percentage craft beers, a few of them, over the episode and talk about lifting. And we did one episode, and I think I said a few off-color things. I was super out of character. You did too, and it never aired. But that was our first.
I love how you said that wasn't off character for me. You said like I said some nasty stuff, very off character. Conor said some nasty stuff,
very in keeping with the theme.
There you go.
No, we just need to do this again. I think because we can go on and on and
like
on.
I do genuinely like. I know, and don't get me wrong. I know it's like it's a motherfucker to sort out all these different schedules, but I would genuinely love to try and do something like a big panel episode with a few voices.
My last question would be, who would you have on?
So like, if I was to just go right off the top of my head, first things first, I'd say, why don't we just get the other podcasts together? The two Andrews, Shane Story and Lawrence King, you guys, me. You know what I mean? And then like, I don't know, does anybody else do a powerlifting podcast I'm not thinking of? You know what? When you just mentioned it, fucking Arthur Lynch was there today and I kept looking at him. I was like, I'm going to get his phone number and see what he's all about.
Is that just because he's a gorgeous individual? Like,
do you know what? Actually, I might have said this and I will stop talking in a minute. When I started in powerlifting, Arthur Lynch was the guy for me.
He's the fucking man.
The guy.
He's still the man.
He is the, like, so, like, I've met really famous pro wrestlers in my day, and a part of the thing is it's called, I think I said this on the podcast, don't mark out, so you don't act like a fan, because you're a professional.
Yeah.
I met Arthur Lynch in Flyfoot once, and he came and said, "You're Ian, aren't you?" And he was just looking for chalk. I was like, "Oh my God, you're fucking Arthur Lynch." And I was like, he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do you have any chalk?" And I was
That's
like,
me, yeah.
"Yep, I do." And I got my chalk. And then I was like, "What do you do?" He's like, "Floor pressing 150. I was like, "Holy shit, that's a lot of weight." And I was like, "What am I doing?" Like, and he was like, "Yeah, sound man."
He's like, good, thanks.
Yeah, he was like, so like, please stop. Like, you know, but he's so cool. He's such a cool guy. Cause I actually listened, you guys put out that podcast. Was that when he was talking about having the big bag of fucking some supplement or something for his, yeah.
He used to do some mad shit. Like, I'd love to get him back on again soon.
And he was talking about the test for the two different, I remember it.
That's a really, I don't remember it at all. I refer out to that episode quite a lot because he goes into his PhD and it's some very, very
and he
interesting
asked
stuff.
you, he's like, "Are you sure you want me to go into this?"
Please, yeah.
You have, like, that's it. Yeah, man, I'm a big fan of that guy. That's the problem with this. People like, get this person, I get that person. I was like, I'm fucking trying. Like, I'm trying here.
Nah, you're doing great.
I'm honestly doing my best. Like, you know what I mean? I have poor damn plagued here trying to get all the different times, like, for all these different people and people moving things around and changing things. But I'm honestly trying. So yeah, that'll be a good one. I can try and like nail him down. But I do want to try potentially do this. So initially my thought would be all the panels of the different podcasts. Obviously, I'm shooting myself in the foot there because fucking Shane Story lives in Canada. But and I obviously want to do it in person. I don't want to do it on online. I think it loses an element over there. And that's like not to say anything about what you guys do. I know you guys do it that way.
It's like the USAPL and the Irish PF. They're just different flavors.
Exactly. So this is what I'm trying to do. This niche of being able to get people in person.
Yeah.
And like, you know, keep them sitting in a podcast studio to past 10 o'clock at night. But then if not that, then I would say like maybe we just go for like, take the big powerlifting clubs, take the head coach in each.
Yeah.
Pop them down. Right. What are we talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And make it happen. Talk through some training philosophies that people have developed over time, where that came from, explore why it works and why elements of it didn't work. Abs powerlifting's system was based on conjugate back in the day. And then that changed because conjugate didn't fucking work for raw lifting. And that's how Jay evolved that. He took elements of this, elements of that. And now it's actually unrecognizable to what it used to be. I remember when I started and I remember the criticisms of it, and probably applicable then, not applicable now. Yeah. Because Jay will never fucking say it, but he does learn. He used to not like RP, and now we have RP on the programs.
No, you do more
have backdowns?
Huh?
Do you have backdowns?
Yeah.
And
motherfucker.
And you do more than 12 singles a year.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
I don't remember that one. That was.
But now he will have people fill in the spreadsheet, like, so they mark in what they did with a green, an orange, or a red. So if it was undershot, like on the money,
this
or
is fucking
overshot.
stress index.
Traffic light,
yeah. But he's like straight up, like he's completely revolutionary. Like he's changed the way he approaches training completely. I'm like, if this bastard can learn, we all can.
He likes to say adapt or die, right? I've heard him say that multiple times.
Yeah. That's why he's on TikTok.
It's true. There you go. Yeah. This is it. I'm not. So
there you go. Neither am I.
Time to level up, boys. Odyssey Strength on TikTok. That's what I'm gonna see. It's gonna come on Monday.
We actually do have a TikTok run by our what would you say?
Our resident young person.
Yeah, Andrew Rowe. Just the great looking dude, perfect
takes all the boxes.
Yeah, and he really adapted well to it straight away. So he has like put out a few videos, but I don't think I'll ever be able to do that.
Don't worry about it. Like all I do is reshare all my shorts that I share on Instagram to TikTok.
That would be the extent of it for me
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
for sure.
All right, boys, let's leave it there.
Awesome.
Savage.
Thank
Thanks
you
very much.
Cheers.